Oh, look at that. Today is just going to be a run into it, buddy. The intro wasn't queued for some reason. I don't know what's going on there. We're talking about little glitches in your system. There's a bit of glitches in my system as well. So there we go. Anyway, here we are.
Can I suggest a fix?
Well, there you go. We just I don't know, make things up as we go sometimes, don't we?
Look, I was waiting for that. Yeah.
Well,
So message
intro,
to our loyal viewers. Yeah, my computer's shut down. Sort of automatically chose to shut itself down twice in the last 20 minutes. So if I suddenly disappear, then fingers crossed I'll pop back in before too long. Okay.
Yeah, no, you will come back on, and that's all right. And we had Philip on nice and early, and I just thought I'll put this comment up here, Philip. This is a bit strange. Someone has put a thumbs down. Maybe we're over the target with our show. Maybe people got coming on and going, "Oh, we'll give this a thumbs down," so it doesn't get much traction. So, yeah, good on you for pointing that out. So I don't know. We were just having a bit of a chuckle, Bruce and I, and thought it might be our favourite commentator, Dan, might have been going, "Oh, now let's get a thumbs down on there." But anyway, we can see. It looks like it's Valerie's on Facebook. And even getting a comment on X as well. Valerie's on both, yeah, making sure it's all ticking along for us there, Valerie. Good on you. Lovely to see. So we'll see how we go.
And message to our down tickers. My understanding is that any sort of interaction, positive or negative, counts. So, yeah, a down tick's as good as an uptick for us. Thank you very much.
Well, that'll do exactly right. It means that you've decided to take your time out, and we're renting free space in your head, and you've decided to jump on there and give us a down play. There we go. And before anybody comments too, yes, I'm aware that I've got a bit of issues with my eye. I don't know whether it's a sty coming up or had a bit of allergy issues and stuff like that. So it is looking a bit puffy there. But anyway, I'm okay, and hopefully it'll solve itself in the next few days or so. But anyway, that's not going to stop us moving ahead, brother Bruce, is it?
No, we've coped with worse than that, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. And if everybody's obviously you're commenting on this, so our sound and our audio and video seems to be coming through okay for you guys, hopefully. So that's all good. And yes, I have had a haircut before anybody else decides they want to mention that as well. I've had the lawnmower go over the head as well. So there we go.
And I haven't.
No, not yet. But anyway, we're still living in tyranny. You said you'd shave when things get back to normal, and looks like you'll be making the most of the old beard for a long time yet, mate. Because I don't think we're going to go with that.
I want a ZZ Top style plat down there.
Right, Willie Nelson style. Is it Willie Nelson that also had the Willie Nelson style plat? Yeah, I think it was. Oh, Willie. There you go. Anyway, Bruce, let's kick on. You got much? You're going to give us another couple of hours tonight?
Look, I always think it'd be a bit under, and it's usually a bit over. So, but I'm going to say it's going to be a bit over. I've got a 150 feel in my bones here.
Yeah, well, that you just add a few more for that because I'm involved, right? So that's all good. Anyway, let's move on. Bruce, during the week, last week, it was a bit of a full-on week, to be honest, because I actually spent hours listening, and I don't like to do it. Q&A in the early days in Parliament Q&A. Watched it in early days, and after a little while, I realised I just wanted to put my foot through the TV every time it was on because it was just a big bloody clown show, right? But last week, not many people might be aware, but I watched quite a bit of the coverage, not all of it, because obviously some of us are still working. And that as well, but I just wanted to show. Well, I don't know why it's now. I'm not sure. I swear we've got glitches in the screen today. I'm trying to share my screen and it won't even let me share my screen. Add to stage. We've always going to remove other media streams from the stage. Why have we got other media streams? That doesn't know.
What about if I drop off?
There we
There
go. There we go. There it is. There it is. And I think we had yours up. But anyway, it's called the Senate Select Committee on Information Integrity on Climate Change and Energy. And there was a few days and it was multiple hours long. And if people want to go onto the Australian Parliament YouTube channel there, they can check out all these things there if people do want to watch this stuff. But I decided to watch part of it because it's talking about I was talking about a lot of mis and disinformation, Bruce, because there was obviously people put in submissions in regards to mis and disinformation in relation to climate change, and it's a whole Senate Select Committee. So I watched a few hours of that, and to be honest, like many others, got quite frustrated watching it in true style. Labor and the Greens were stitching it up, trying to uncover organisations and individuals that had some things to say around climate change. And there was one of the fifth frustrating things, Bruce, was that there was a lot of community organisations that sprung up because they have, people might be listening to shows like ours or Genuine Concerns. They've listened to Ian Plimer or other people and just decided that the climate change narrative is BS, and the renewables rollout is hurting them as a community, and this push to net zero is actually hurting them. But the Labor government and the Greens seem to think that all these small groups that have popped up around the nation to push back have been created on behalf of organisations, other bigger organisations like Advance or the Institute of Public Affairs and so forth, and believe that they've been given funding to bring that up. But anyway, I thought I'd spend this in my little bit of an intro, just going over a couple of clips that I've shared that have gone off on my social media, because people are rightly getting frustrated at the framing of some of this stuff. So I'm going to, for those of you people that have been following me for a while on my other socials, you may have seen some of these, but it's worth repeating some of it. So I'm going to share some of it now with you. So this first one is the Alliance Council of Australia, Bruce, and most people know that. You'd be aware of that. And Bright Hope's involved, many others. Very great, community group that's trying to bring groups together and that. So we had them being disparaged in this committee, and I'm waiting for a little bit of a comeback from them. But I'll let them speak for themselves, and then you can maybe jot down some notes and go from there. So I don't know if you can hear that okay. All right, there's my technology going silly here. Let me just bring you back down there. I've got a couple of clips that I just want to go through. And let's have a listen and see if it'll play for me. For some reason, there we go.
Questions I have, Chair, before we
can you hear that?
Move on. According to your website, in June 2024, NREN announced that you were planning to affiliate with the Alliance Council of Australia. This is a coalition of fringe anti-vaccine groups who claim that the WHO is conducting an unprecedented power grab. And I say this as someone who previously was an infectious diseases specialist, one of the biggest hospitals here in Victoria, the Alfred. I was on the front line during the pandemic, and I take infectious diseases very seriously, as I do the care of patients over my near 30-year career. Did this affiliation take place?
Yeah, well, I sat in on the ACA, some of their meetings, yes.
And the affiliation has occurred, has it?
Well, I don't know what you call affiliation, I think.
Just because you sit in on the meeting, that doesn't mean anything.
No, you're right, it doesn't. So
your website says you can't do that.
Yeah. Look, we did.
As far as I know, we didn't.
Yeah, we did. Again, we thought there was mutual area of concern there, not directly with renewables, but the whole agenda, if you like, is coming from the same people in the same direction. And so it's a holistic approach. I mean, we're looking for allies wherever we can, because, we're one by one.
I'd also like to say we have allies in conservation groups as well. Mary in particular works a lot with various conservation groups, because this issue isn't a partisan issue necessarily. It cuts across all spectrums, and rightly so. We heard from the farmers who sat at the table before we did. They've got their opinion and lived experiences. We've got our opinion and lived experience.
So you're comfortable that affiliating yourselves with an anti-vaccine group is going to somehow advance your cause?
I think that's a pejorative statement. I mean, it's implying so much that I don't think is really true. I mean, I've met the people and I've, over Zoom numerous times, and there's a bunch of intelligent, thinking people. They're not loose cannons. I mean,
just the first few questions and comments. If you could give a brief answer. My understanding is the Aligned Council has many preventative health experts on it, including registered doctors. Is that correct?
yes.
Yeah.
So there you go, mate. That was Labor Senator Michelle Ananda-Rajah having a go at the people that the volunteers that are as part of NREN, which is National Rational Energy Network, and trying to disparage them as for being involved with, or sort of aligned with Aligned Council of Australia, because they're sort of obviously fighting back on the same things. And you heard her; she's an epidemiologist expert or whatever. Obviously she clearly went for the whole COVID stuff, but she's trying to align, like anti-vaxxer in with people pushing back on renewables. So you can see how these people's minds think, is trying to do whatever they can to undermine small groups. And Catherine Nitschke there, who was speaking, she's obviously a great South Australian, doing a lot in the Adelaide Hills area as well. We obviously knows John and Edna Tate, and doing a lot behind the scenes. So just community groups trying to do this, and this is that labelling, the continued labelling and othering for people. In these whole movements, which is just ridiculous. So anyway, I'm going to play a couple more clips, and I see that you're taking notes there, but you want to talk into that one, mate? You want to talk into that one?
Before you do, I'd just like to pick up a couple of things that the Senator said there, because it's a great illustration of false arguments, because she managed in that very short clip to use 3 false arguments in debating terms. So first off, she labelled the Aligned Council as a fringe group of anti-vaxxers. Okay, so that's what's called an ad hominem attack. She's attacking the people and saying they're crazy. She's not attacking their evidence or their arguments. So that's number one. She's used an ad hominem to attack them. She's then followed up with what's called an appeal to authority. So she said, I'm an expert because I was an infectious disease physician during COVID. Well, trust me, darling, you're not doing your argument any favours by pointing that out, all right? But that's called an appeal to authority. Listen to me because I'm an expert. And the final thing she did was she used a straw man argument, because as I understand it, what was being discussed here was renewable energy. And she's then thrown in, well, you can't trust these people because they're anti-vaxxers, which is it's an irrelevant argument. So she's erected an argument and then destroyed it when it wasn't the argument at all. So there in 60 seconds, she's rolled out 3 false debating tactics. And it's very illustrative. Once you know what these are, and I got my information on debating from a great book by Canadian philosopher Stefan Molyneux, which is called The Art of the Argument. And he sets out 12 or more different examples of false arguments and invalid debating tactics. And there you go. If you're interested in that, The Art of the Argument, Stefan Molyneux. Back to you.
Yeah, and this next one will probably infuriate more people as well, because she manifests a global think tank. So let's have a listen to this one here. You might like this. Let's see if I can get this up again. When it wants me to go. There we go.
On the topic of misinformation, do you accept that the World Economic Forum have cited misinformation, disinformation as our top 1-2 threats over the next couple of years?
I'm sure that's an accurate factual statement, but I have no truck with the World Economic Forum. That's not even an official government organisation.
So you don't like universities.
If we're
you
going to go into
don't
Klaus
like the
Schwab,
CSIRO, you don't like the World Economic Forum. You regard the Senate and the Australian Parliament with contempt because you didn't want to put the
so,
effort
okay,
into writing a more robust submission.
I'm
Okay.
That's what I'm.
If-
that's
Sorry,
what I'm
Senator.
hearing.
So,
that's
Senator,
not,
are you-
excuse me, so I'm making a point of order.
Just
Chair.
inquiring.
Mr. Wild, that is not acceptable behaviour. I read out earlier.
That's actually
You do not ask a
patronising.
senator
How
if she's
dare you.
okay.
How dare you?
That is misogynistic.
Who do you think you
and
are?
rude.
Who do you
Can
think
you define,
are?
if you think it's misogynistic, tell me what a woman is.
I'm a
No,
doctor,
no,
all right?
You can't
How
do that?
dare
No,
you?
So how can you
Wild,
say
that
it's
is-
Teach me that
misogynistic
way.
if you don't even know what a woman
The
is?
country is watching you right now, Mr. Wild. I
think
just
they're watching you.
remind you of your behaviour.
So can you actually
Mr.
tell me-
Hargraves.
Mr. Wild, I'm just letting you know, sorry, Deputy Chair, it is not acceptable behaviour to say that to a senator. It is, if you do it again, we'll go into a private meeting and we'll adjudicate on this. Please let the Deputy Chair finish her questioning and answer the question when you get a chance. Thank you.
Chair, can I just on the point of order? Can I just say on the point of order, Chair, on the point of order, respect is a two-way street. I'll make the point again. Once we've asked a question, it would be good to let the witnesses have more than just a few seconds before they're interrupted. Okay? And then we might just take the heat out.
I was listening to Mr. Hargraves while Mr. Wild was interjecting, right? So I was trying to actually listen to Mr. Hargraves, Senator Canavan. Mr. Hargraves, back to
So
you.
there's actually two things we've agreed on.
yeah.
Yes, I've no reason to doubt that the World Economic Forum listed this amongst the top 5 risks facing them.
In the next 2 years, top two threats in the next 2 years.
That's their assessment.
Yeah.
But certainly there are expert institutions that would have raised concerns about the impact that fossil fuel misinformation and disinformation has had. The IPCC has cited it as a concern. The World Economic Forum cited it as a concern.
Much more proactive. We own the science, and we think that the world, should know it, and the platforms themselves also do. We own the science.
So anyway, there you go, buddy. And just a couple of things I want to pick on. If you hear some chuckling in the background, that's actually Malcolm Roberts. God love him. He's having a chuckle at her while she's calling herself out. But there's a manifestation of any senator in Australia, and I'm just going to put this on the record. Any politician or senator in Australia that wants to manifest the World Economic Forum, you are an enemy of the Australian people, as far as I'm concerned. So that's where what I think of Senator Michelle Ananda-Rajah trying to manifest the World Economic Forum, and that person on the end there was one of the from one of the organisations that's actually pushing the whole stronger sanctions in regards to mis and disinformation. But the other thing, what do you think? What do you think Mr. Wild from the IPA asked Senator Michelle Ananda-Rajah to get so upset? What was the simple thing that he did?
Did I hear asking for a definition of what a woman was?
He did that first, but at first he said, because she was quoting the World Economic Forum, he kind of thought, he went, "Are you okay?" Like he said, "Are you okay?" And they got massively offended, and he's misogynistic for asking asking a woman if she's okay, and that's where all that furor started from. And then obviously, she quoted that, "I'm a doctor, you know who I am, I'm a doctor," and all this. So it's like, oh my gosh, you can't make this stuff up.
I was going to pick that up. So she's done a fourth thing there in her false debating techniques. As soon as she didn't like a question she was being asked, she threw in the victim card. How dare you? I'm a woman. That's misogynist. I didn't hear anything mentioned about women there. And if I remember the mental health campaign, weren't we all supposed to ask each other, "Are you okay?" all the time?
Yep. Yeah, well, it's a simple, "Are you okay?" I mean, you're quoting the World Economic Forum. Are you okay?
You'd think a doctor would know about the "Are you okay?" campaign, wouldn't you?
You'd think so, mate. You'd think so. But anyway, I'll move on. There was a couple of other ones that I wanted to finish off. I won't give it one more, sort of a bit more longish one, and then there's a quick one that I'm going to finish off, because the last one will make you laugh as well, hopefully. So, but anyway, let's bring up this other one.
Where did the term reckless renewables come from? Did Enron come up with that idea, the title?
Yeah,
or?
one of our members in Queensland came up with that on the committee. We were trying to think of a catchphrase to use, and that was
It was
what we chose.
also adopted by the coalition during the federal election.
Yeah.
So we have you to thank for that.
Lady from Queensland.
And I guess what is playing in my mind is, how do we know that your organisation, NREN, is not a proxy for the coalition to fight their battles on the ground against renewable energy, which was resoundingly endorsed by the Australian people at the election, resoundingly. In fact, to the point where the coalition had their worst result in living memory. So how do we know, how does the committee know that you are not a proxy group to fight the battles for the coalition, given your close association with the member for New England?
Well, I know it's a close association, but obviously we're sympathetic to Barnaby's view, I guess, because he's sort of one of the few that talks language that we understand a lot of the time. I know it might not rest well with you, but it sits fairly well with us. But then I've never been a member of the National Party or the Liberal Party, and I probably not voted for them numerous times because they signed us up to a lot of these agreements, and so I can see their shortcomings.
How do we know you are not being manipulated by them?
I can just assure you, if we're not,
Because your messaging is so aligned. You have a close.
great minds think alike. I don't know.
Ms. Nishki, you'd like to add something?
Yeah.
I would think there's evidence that we aren't a proxy for them, because if we were a proxy from them, surely we'd be getting some resources or some funding or, just anything. We don't get anything like that. And of course, I think I wasn't on the committee at the time of its inception, so, I wasn't there. But the thing is, people meet at a rally and go, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's get together and do something about it. Nothing ever happens. It's just a thought bubble.
Ms. Nishki, I think that's a little disingenuous. Were you not previously a political staffer for a South Australian senator?
25 years ago, yes.
Right.
In a former lifetime.
There are political associations here that are real, perhaps very close associations, and with that comes influence. So to my mind, you seem to be a proxy for the coalition to fight their battles on the ground.
Just because we have some ideas that overlap. We have ideas that overlap with One Nation. We have ideas that overlap with the National Party. We have ideas that overlap with a number of the micro parties, but that doesn't mean that we're a proxy for any of them. We're independent people. And also, I think the nature of our group is that we are a very loose network. We literally are farmers all spread out. This is the first time I've ever met Grant in person, because he's in New South Wales, I'm in South Australia. And, we're people who are just passionate about this because it's impacting our communities, it's impacting us personally, impacts family, etc. And so we're wanting to try to make a difference and stand up for all those people, the farmers who are so busy that they don't have time to speak up. We appreciate that you've invited us here today to speak and have a seat at the table, because that's part of the problem. We feel like our interests aren't being represented at a political level.
Your interests or someone else's interests? Anyway, let's move on.
No,
let's move on.
Like individual farmer
All right.
interests.
I want just a couple of questions I have, Chair, before we move on.
So she's very condescending, she's putting, an absolute piling on the crap on these people. And so what she's saying there, Bruce, is that she's lumping all these groups that have organically grown, and she's saying that they can't be just an organic group of community members that are really frustrated about what's going on with renewables in their country, with the solar panels, with the wind factories, and massive batteries and all these sorts of stuff. They can't just organically grow. There has to be an ulterior motive behind them. There has to be massive money underneath them, and she's belittling them. And as the point I made in that in that little post Bruce there is that, we should be asking that senator, Senator Nanda Raja, whether she's a proxy for the World Economic Forum or, these other global think tanks. I mean, don't we, you've written that down? What are you going?
How do we know she's not a proxy for the Greens is what I would have asked her.
Well, she probably is. I mean, there was another senator on that committee, which I haven't done a lot of shorts for. It was Senator Wish Wilson, who's the Greens, and her and him were bouncing off each other through that whole Senate thing there, mate.
And by the way, what she's just done again is another ad hominem. She said to the witness, well, you're just a mouthpiece for the Liberals, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In no way addressing their argument. She's just labelling them as something bad, and therefore they can be discounted.
Yeah.
So what's that? 5 or 6 times in a very short conversation, she's pulled an invalid debating argument rather than address the concerns of the witness.
Yep.
And great job, both witnesses. Great job.
Yeah,
they both kept it cool.
Yep. It was exceptional. So if people do get a chance to go in and watch that, how the witnesses conduct themselves under this barrage, because there was a whole heap. The IPA one was quite funny because they give him a heap of stick, and as you saw with with Mr. Wild giving her a bit of stick and asking her okay. But the whole premise of this is they're trying to find out who might be funding these smaller groups to have their voice being heard. So these are people that are genuinely concerned, and what this is all about is about finding out who's involved, so they can close it all down, so the government doesn't have any have any counter voices against their narrative and their agendas. And that's this. If you see it, if people genuinely want to check it out, it is a massive witch hunt scenario, and that's what I ended up coming back to, is that it was a massive witch hunt. Now I'm just going to play this last one, then obviously you've got to get into your stuff, and because you've commented along, but you might have a bit of a chuckle at this last one. I'll play this one for you. If I get my technology running right today, when it wants to work for me. Let's get the sound going.
Statement. The coalition's announcement of its nuclear plans, and this is what you said in your statement, the coalition's announcement of its nuclear plans this week was very welcome and long awaited by us. And then you used a German term, Untermenschen. What does the phrase Untermenschen mean to you, and why did you refer to yourself in this way?
Underclass, because that's the way we feel.
You are aware of the historical roots of this term?
Probably
Nazis.
You can
full knowledge.
I looked it up. It took me 1 second on Wikipedia. The historical roots of this term are with the Nazi Party, where they described others who are not in the Aryan race as subhuman, and that's what Untermenschen means.
I knew the subhuman. That was my.
So people who disagree with NREN are regarded as Untermenschen.
No.
Okay?
I was referring to us as the Untermenschen in the way we're treated with the whole renewables role.
There you go. So,
and by the way, she's just done yet another debating faux pas there, because have you heard of Godwin's law?
No.
Godwin's law says the first person who mentions Hitler loses the argument. So I reckon that what she's just done, what she's basically doing is she's trying to label the witness as being a Nazi, when in fact he's doing the complete opposite. He's saying he's the victim of the Nazis.
Yep, that's right.
But nevertheless, Godwin's law, she just lost the argument again by bringing up Hitler.
Yep, absolutely right. And this is the whole thing, isn't it? Like, and it's trying to just label everybody, throw labels, not win an argument or anything else like that. But look, at the end of the day, if you want to check out the whole committee, you can do so. It's got on the Parliament of Australia YouTube channel. But there was one in particular, Bruce, that wanted to, and I've made it private now. I just want to show that before I move on. Is a young lad from Nuclear Australia. He's 19-year-old Will Shackle, and this is definitely worth checking out. And if people want to check it out, it's on my Substack, where I link his. And I actually do recommend Now, regardless, I mean, he does have a little bit of the propensity to talk about climate change being real, but this young guy started this at 16, and he really, honestly, he conducted himself far better at 19 than the majority of politicians in our parliament, I reckon. So if anybody wants to check that out, I reckon check that out as well. And I did have it linked to my Substack, but it looks like they've played silly buggers with it and they made it and changed some links around and that, so it's not coming up there. Otherwise, I would have showed them. But definitely, young Will Shackle is definitely someone to check out. There, young guy at 19, and he's doing some great stuff in regards to nuclear.
And that whole committee was labelled the Senate Commission on Information Integrity on ...
On climate change and energy, yeah.
Sounds a bit Orwellian to me.
Information
the Committee
integrity.
for Information Integrity.
Very interesting, isn't it? It just tells you exactly what it is. 1984 Orwellian, absolutely, mate, absolutely. But anyway, now that's all done, let's move on to your stuff.
You reckon?
Yeah,
right.
It's about time.
Oh, there we go. There's me. I believe you're meant to say, let's do this, Mark.
Let's do this. And sorry, I haven't been keeping up with a lot of the comments coming through, but yes, I'll just chuck a few of those up anyway as we go through, as you're starting to do your little intro.
Now, sadly for the Senator, I'm going to bring up a couple of not easy being Greens again. And I know that that's unusual for this show, but what have we got? We've got more green projects failing, and this affects your state of South Australia because the company behind Port Augusta's concentrated solar thermal plant, in other words, remember the Ivanpah and Tonopah multi-mirror farms that directed the solar energy up to a central sodium block? Both of them, of course, failed after 10 years, despite probably being in the world's best location for collecting solar. Well, of course, South Australia is building their own version, but the company behind it's just gone bust. And, of course, there's significant taxpayer funds invested there, hopefully not from yours and my super. But, yet another failure. Didn't know whether to put this story here or in the Muslim section or perhaps the zombie section. But, yeah, found a story. Apparently climate change is not gender neutral.
Okay. Wow.
Guess which gender gets affected more?
In climate change? Oh, well, I don't know. It'd have to be, I have to say it's got to be female, isn't it?
Well, surely it'd be all those outdoor workers, the carpenters, the farmers, all the men outside doing sort of manly things.
Yeah.
No, it's the women, apparently. Women are worse affected by it.
All right, it'll be interesting to see what comes up there.
We've got more battery recalls due to fire risk, with Tesla Powerwalls being recalled. And as I've shown you in the past, I've seen enough bad stories about battery fires that I charge all my tool batteries in their own little shed, so I lose nothing else if and when that catches fire. And a bit of a redux on the old EVs will burn underwater story. With a story exactly of that from America, where a damaged EV was quarantined, as it should be, for 3 weeks in a water bath in a wrecker's yard. And after 3 weeks, it caught fire whilst in the water bath. So, as I said, when I did training on this with the CFS, my take-home message for an electric vehicle fire was order 10 tonnes of water and quarantine for 3 days, which sounds like it's quarantine for 3 weeks.
Well, about that. 3 weeks isolation.
Well, more than that, because this one caught fire after 3 weeks. We've got a few health stories. Apparently, Australian scientists have refuted the Panadol/autism link. And I must say, I don't think Panadol's causal. I think it may be a contributor because it does attack your own body's antioxidant defense mechanisms, which is probably important if your body is inflamed by aluminium neurotoxins. But apparently Aussie scientists have not only discounted it, they've refuted it. So I'm going to look at that.
Mm.
Now, having said that, the vaccine court in America has just handed down a rare positive finding for the claimants by saying that, yes, the 10 or 11 vaccines given to an infant were the cause of the kid's demise shortly thereafter. And I'm going to look at the vaccine court and how biased it is and how it, what the history of it is. So why is it there? And it goes back to the President Reagan era when the vaccine manufacturers said, we're getting sued too much, we can't make money, we're going to stop making vaccines. And instead of Reagan saying, good idea, he gave them exemption from liability instead, since when the vaccine schedules exploded because there's no risk to the manufacturers anymore. You know, the safe bit applies to the manufacturers. They're safe from lawsuits. And saw a story about an Australian supercar race driver who's said that his radical diet, he's been carnivore for 8 years, is, he believes, the cause of his ongoing good health. Of course, the British Heart Foundation said that it's dangerous and he has to stop. Got a lovely example of Alinskyism in the diversity is strength segment, where a New Zealand pro basketball team has refused to wear pride jerseys coming up. And they've said they can't do it because it clashes with the cultural beliefs of some of their members. So that's one of Alinsky's rules. You hold your enemy to their own rules. And the left and the DEI people are always saying we have to respect all cultures. Well, that's their argument here. Well, culturally, we can't do it. So I'm going to have a look at that. Zombie stories. We got the return of the Indigenous cricketer, with Australia apparently about to get its third ever Indigenous test player. So we're going to have a look at him. White he may be. And finally, again, a story from South Australia where the Advertiser had a feel-good story about a farmer who had a quad bike accident up in the Adelaide Hills, broke his neck, didn't know, was put in the car by his wife who was driving him to hospital when a CFS fire truck went in the other direction. So they flagged it down, and the CFS firefighters who knew first aid saved him by immobilising his neck. So I'm just going to look at that, because spinal precautions have been the bane of my life as a doctor, because they make everything else you want to do with a patient more difficult. Airway management more difficult. You've got to lie them flat when maybe you want to sit them up because of lung injury, whatever. So I'm just going to look at the myth I'm going to bust here is the old "don't move them" myth for people who've had a trauma. I'm going to show you that there's actually no evidence that spinal precautions, immobilising people who might have spinal injuries, there's no evidence that they're either necessary or effective. Never has been. And yet it's one of those things that everybody just assumes. So that's
well, it's going to be interesting to see the comments we got from that, because Dan's commented on the South Australian Focus. He's gone, Bruce criticises the appeal to authority and then insists that everybody take advice from him about the firefighting, medicine and investing because he's an expert. Cooked pot calling the kettle black, he reckons.
Well, Dan's missing there, and probably because he's rocked his brain, and we showed a story last week how grok reduces your IQ. What he's missing here is at no stage do I say, believe me, because I'm an expert. In fact, if anything, I say the opposite. I say, I'm an expert and I've learned that everything they taught us was wrong. And we repeatedly lay out the evidence on this show. So I'm going to actually say, Dan, you're actually doing the inverse of the appeal to the expert. So appeal to experts say you have to believe someone because they're an expert. Well, the inverse of that, which again is an invalid debating technique, is you say you can't trust someone because they're not qualified. That's the converse, which is yet another, faulty debating techniques. And Dan, you really ought to get Stefan Molyneux's book, The Art of the Argument. So to stop you making some of these basic debating errors.
Yeah, good one. And just a few people showed interest in. They're going to be interested in your gender neutral climate thing. Yeah. Nick Beck's come up saying women are moody things. It's nice outside. They will be happy and bake some cookies if it's cold. She grows horns. and then Maddie Maxco thought they were going to say trans people are more affected by climate change. So anyway.
Well, of course they are, because trans people are women and men at the same time. So they're going to get a double hit, aren't they?
Because they're like the weather and can't make up their mind. Well, sort of, yeah, Nick sort of agreed a little bit with that. So anyway, there you go. I just thought it was a bit of interest in that. So good on you guys. Appreciate your feedback.
Now, Maddie, again, in passing, Maddie, you've used the term non-binary there, which is a sort of trendy
Nick
term
has, yeah. Nick has, yep.
for our transgender people. So here's the irony about labeling somebody as non-binary. So by using the word non there, they're either non-binary or they're binary, okay? Which means there's two possibilities, which means they're binary. The self-detonating argument, mate.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, self-detonating. Oh, yeah, I like it.
I'm getting orally mugged by horses outside saying we heard your voice and it might be food time. It's not food time. Just wait.
Yeah. Well, it's been a while since they had a chat through the window, Bruce. It's been a while since they said, "Come on, Dad, give me some food."
I think I raised my voice a bit there, and I might have given the game away,
Maybe.
All right, let's kick into it. Let's do this thing, Mark.
Let's do this thing. Let's do this.
So yet another green energy investment goes belly up with the company behind a number of green energy projects in Australia, including South Australia's what they call concentrated solar. That's where you beam the power up to a central point. They've gone belly up. So Port Augusta looks like you're not going to get your concentrated solar plant, which is a good thing because we know they don't work. And remember, this may or may not be a private company, but if you're building green stuff in Australia, you're still getting lots of taxpayer money tipped in. So we don't know how much taxpayer money's gone west here, but you can bet that there'll be some.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, there's taxpayer money always going out the window.
Now, as noted, this UN report, where's that senator? Can we trust the UN or is it only the WF?
Oh, no, she quotes the UN as well. Don't worry. The UN, the WEF, the whole lot, they're all knee deep into them all.
Well, I'm wondering if she's okay in that case.
Oh, that's misogynistic, Bruce, didn't you know?
Only if you can tell me what a woman is.
True that. And that's why Damien Wild posited that question as well.
And again, as you see here, you can see that this story again confuses the terms. So gender and sex are being used increasingly interchangeable when they're not. Gender is the fuel, sex is the plumbing. Nevertheless, this story says that climate change is not gender neutral, and guess which gender gets affected more often? It's women. Now, woman, of course, is an adult human female, so that's a sex, but let's leave that aside. Maybe that should have been in our old category of climate change and. So if I'd have typed in climate change and women, or women gender, then perhaps that would have come up earlier.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, fortunately, I think we don't have to worry about this because using the old hot day equals climate change precedent, I'm going to use the converse, which is cold day equals no climate change precedent. And indeed, we've had another very cold week in Eastern Australia, unusually cold, with a number of cities plunging to their lowest ever November, including our national capital of Canberra, which was minus 2.3 degrees earlier in the week, well below average. So I'm going to say that apparently, using this as evidence, I'm going to say that climate change is over anyway, so let's not worry about it.
good. You're absolutely right. I was wondering about that the last couple of days, thinking about how blooming cold it was getting. I thought we're in spring and it just feels like winter, man.
Mark, we're 2 weeks off summer. We ain't in spring.
Yeah, I know, right? It's ridiculous.
All right.
And Gail's saying Tassie's got snow alert in the Highlands. Eh? Bloody hell.
Now, I'm still wondering, of course, maybe this Tesla story is not something we need to worry about as well, because Tesla have again recalled a battery, in this case, 10,500 of their Powerwall systems, because there's been a number of overheats and fires. So hopefully our government's not going to force us to put these large incendiary devices on the walls of our homes and garages, given that we've now just worked out that climate change is not a thing because it was cold last week.
That's exactly right.
But here's the worrying detail in the story. Well, first of all, they said there were 10,500 Tesla Powerwalls recalled. The problem was that the lithium batteries could overheat and catch fire, and that there'd been half a dozen fires and overheats. But here's the bit. Tesla is remotely discharging online units until replacements are installed. So what that means is Tesla is reaching down the wires and taking the electricity out of your battery. And we've talked about the whole smart meter phenomenon. That power's there. If Tesla can take the electricity out of your battery, the government can do it, or the government can order Tesla to do it. So, you want to go down to Melbourne for a demo tomorrow against renewable energy? Oh, tough luck. Your EV and your house, all the electricity's gone. How are you going to move, mate?
Yeah, no, exactly right.
No misinformation for you.
No, exactly right. Miss Norgabell, your podcast from your home there, we're going to have to cut your electricity out, and you and Bruce are misspeaking.
Right. Now,
and was it without the risk of gazumping you? It was like I thought I saw a story about Tesla's resale value dropping down to about a quarter of the purchase price. Quarter.
Yep. Guy's just shown that. 80% depreciation with Teslas. And the reason is because people just don't know what the battery condition is. They don't know how you dealt with it. Have you overcharged it, undercharged it? Have you damaged it? How many cycles has it done? How many times has the government ripped the energy out of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a huge problem.
Yep.
All right. Now, speaking of battery problems and overheating batteries, here's an update on a story that we've covered recently. In this case, it's from Sydney YouTuber Guy's channel, which I highly recommend. So I'm going to show you a clip of his. And this is where he talks about the damaged EV in the US, which caught fire 3 weeks into its quarantine and then continued to burn underwater. Now, if you're going to give me an add to share screen, yes, you are. Good.
You should have enough there. You should, yeah.
Yeah,
and maybe you want to jot this down for a bit later when you're covering your anything about health, but and we can come back to it so we're not breaking up. But Gail's asking, does Australia have the same conditions of vaccine liability exemption because of the American ruling? So maybe if you can touch on that after we cover this.
Look, I'll touch on that now, and I honestly don't know the answer to that. But the big reason America matters is because that's where the products come from. That's where the schedules come from. That's where the science comes from. And we pretty much follow on. During the COVID era, the big manufacturers, Pfizer and so forth, we just did what we told. We accepted what they said. The TGA just rubber stamps it. So I'm not sure about liability law, but the whole environment is shaped by what America does.
Yeah, and I have to say they're probably exempt from a lot of things. Yep. PrEP Act or whatever it is.
That story about the EV that was submerged in a container full of water, and it didn't want to play ball. It wanted to keep burning underwater. Check this out. Submerged electric vehicle causes water to boil for 13 hours. Here is something you don't see every day. A submerged electric vehicle caused water to boil for 13 hours. The Amarillo Fire Department said the car was on a semi-truck when it was rear-ended a few weeks ago. The vehicle was taken to a towing company in Amarillo, where it was placed inside a special container. After 3 weeks of sitting there, the car suddenly caught fire. Here's some video, but I'll show you the proper video in a minute. So the towing company called the Amarillo Fire Department. The container was then filled up to the top with water, completely submerging the car. The water heated up to at least 212 degrees and stayed at that level for more than half a day as the water boiled for 13 hours. It's absolutely insane. So firstly, we'll have a look at some time-lapse footage for when the car actually first caught fire. This is obviously security cam footage. You can see that the car is in that tank. It's starting to smoke. Obviously, as I say, it doesn't need atmospheric oxygen to burn. The volume of smoke increased, and then we have flames coming out of the car.
In a water bath.
It's in a tank of water. Just always remind yourself of that while you're watching this. Then the fire department comes along very shortly and fills up the container even more with water. So it actually covers the roof of the car entirely.
Wow, 212
see
degrees.
bubbles rising.
God dang.
Steaming away or smoking away.
Yeah, you can imagine if these things are under bloody car parks.
Just hold it down and turn it off too.
Yeah, or just touch it.
It's just absolutely mad.
Yeah, it is mad. And when he says 212, that's Fahrenheit, which of course is equivalent to 100 Celsius. That water will stay at 100 C until it's all boiled away. That's how thermodynamics works. But yeah, we've talked about this before. These things will burn underwater. These things will ignite underwater after 3 weeks. So forget your 10 tons of water and quarantine for 3 days. It's 3 weeks plus, and you're still not safe.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And you can understand then, over time, parking garages will say, we'll probably put a limit on it and say, look, we're not allowing this. You know what I mean? Like, we're not allowing them in here.
And they've started to do that. And of course, the government will respond to that with some sort of discrimination law, because they can't have their electric dream questioned. So things like, well, we can't get insurance because it's too expensive, or we can't park it in the car park because the risk is too high. The government will introduce some sort of legislation to prevent companies taking that action. Because this is too big to fail. The whole electric green dream cannot fail. It will, of course, but nothing can stand in the way of it. The government is 100% committed to it, and there's no going back until the whole thing burns down, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Crazy.
Okay, now apparently carbon neutral is not neutral for everything or everybody, because carbon neutral apparently has killed millions of bats around the world. So it's not just birds that these things chop up, it's bats. With this report saying that millions of bats are killed every year by wind turbines. And that includes 500,000 in Canada, 50,000 in Canada, 500,000 in the US, and even 200,000 in that green nirvana, Germany, which have just sacrificed their entire industrial economy for saving the planet. But that apparently doesn't include saving the wildlife.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Canada, Australia.
And we do have bats in this country. You see them flying around. I've been down at Werribee Park and watched them flying around. Often at night they'll fly around, and bats fly quite differently to birds. And if you watch them go past in the darkness, they're not birds, they're bats.
Yeah.
Adelaide's
Yeah,
got
Sydney.
that, of course.
Yeah, Sydney as well. Yeah, no, we've there was a whole heap. I think it was it Raynor Park or something. One evening for something, there was a whole heap of them.
Yeah, around the zoo.
Yeah, that area. Yep.
All righties. Okay.
Mhm.
Another
Oh,
green
yeah.
story.
Can't blame the bats for viruses now. They'll all be dead.
Yes. Now, problem from Sweden. Remember a few weeks ago we talked about the Australian government wants to unlock your super and use it for green energy investments. Now, I called the alarm on that because, things are locked up because they're valuable. And if they're not kept locked, they get stolen. So unlocking your super means stealing it and investing it in green boondoggles that fall over destroys it. And not only does First Principles tell us that, but the Swedes have actually tried it. So this story from Sweden says they did exactly that. They diverted pension fund money into green projects in Sweden. And guess how that went? Yeah, that went as described. They're now in the red by billions of dollars for those pension funds. So those Swedes who had funds that they wanted to use to pay for their retirement, the government said, nope, we've got a better idea. Took their money and blew it, lost it, took it down to the casino and blew it. So, yep, that's beware of any similar projects here.
Yes. Yes, as I keep talking about it, Mr. Chalmers wants that picking the trough stuff, doesn't he?
Well, they're coming for your supermarket.
They are indeed. Yep.
All right. So, and just before we go on, what did Wayne have to say? Yep.
22.
Wayne, my opinion is they're going to steal everything in your super. So, yeah, I got mine out as soon as I could and I did take a hit. So I've got very little left in super and most of my retirement is funded off savings and other things that I did while I was still working. I don't trust the government to not steal my super because they steal everything. They steal everything.
Yep, they do. They want to get your hands on everything of yours.
Now, it looks like Matty there's answering the question about liability exemption. So what's he said? There's no exemption in Australia unless it's in the confidential commercial contract, etc., etc. Have to go via legal avenues. Unlikely Australia's courts would give a result. You need to prosecute or charge them through international law. And this is the point. Good luck getting a decent outcome through the Australian system. And we've seen that with people who've tried. In most cases, they get some sort of legal diversion, such as you don't have any standing. Remember that doctor who took a state government to court because he vaccinated his kids based on what the government said. And then he said, well, hang on, that's wrong. And I'm worried that I've damaged them. And the court said, you don't have standing, which means it's nothing to do with you. So this is a doctor who injected his own kids and is worried that he's damaged them. The court said, well, you have no basis for bringing a claim. It's irrelevant to you. That's the rub, even if they don't have legal indemnity protection in Australia, you can guarantee they've got it via the back door because the courts will either not hear the cases or not rule in your favour.
Yeah, I think it was a Tasmanian doctor from memory, yeah.
When you think about it, let's say you did take Pfizer to court in Australia, Pfizer would roll out the world's best experts to say that, you're wrong and it's no problem. And you would struggle to find a doctor who would speak in your favour. And if you did, the judge would Google it and the first thing that come up was anti-vaxxer, discredited, thoroughly, struck off, etc., etc. So they've already discredited your experts before you even use them. So I don't have any faith that the Australian courts would rule favourably in most cases.
Yeah. No. Well, that's what's happened, isn't it? Yep. That's exactly what's happened over the past years. Yep.
Okay, so just kicking on a bit. You might remember a few weeks ago, RFK Jr. / Trump's big announcement on autism was that Panadol appeared to be in some way linked. And at the time, I think a lot of us were disappointed by that because we think that's not the main meat here. The main meat we still think is neurotoxic adjuvants, particularly aluminium. Nevertheless, the first thing that came out was, yeah, we think Panadol has a role here. Now, that was immediately reflexively discounted by all the professional bodies. Again, using some of those false arguing tactics that we've talked about, the old, well, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about. So appeal to authority, or its converse, you're not qualified. And here we've got Australian researchers who reportedly during the week have refuted Donald Trump's claim that paracetamol caused autism. So that's what they said. So I thought, okay, well, let's just look into that a little bit more. So, as you know, the meanings of words matter. So what does the word refute mean? Because first off, the story says research refutes the claim. So what does refute mean? It means to prove a statement or theory to be wrong. So that's what the story says. We have proven Trump was wrong. Okay. Now, next, what did Trump actually say? Did he say paracetamol causes autism? No, he didn't. He said that Tylenol can cause autism. Tylenol being the US trade name for paracetamol. So he didn't say it causes it. He said it can cause it. So that straight away nukes anybody who wants to pop up and say, well, my kid's got autism and I never took Panadol. So that's not a valid argument because he's not saying everybody who takes it gets autism, nor is he saying that every case of it is caused. He's just saying there's a link. It can be a cause. And do you really believe we can trust this news organisation who also quoted him as saying, he said pregnant people should tough it out? Can you hear the words pregnant people should tough? Can you hear those words coming out of Donald Trump's mouth? Because frankly, I can't.
No, absolutely not. No, and he's definitely proven that in some of the policies that he's put forward since becoming re-elected. And he definitely wouldn't be calling women that are pregnant people. That's for sure.
Okay, so what's the substance of the claim anyway? So they've refuted his claim. So how have they refuted it? Well, they've done a number of things. One, have they said the claim lacked scientific backing? It's almost an appeal to authority, isn't it? Well, the experts don't agree. Next, they've said they found no clear evidence connecting the two. And thirdly, they said the reliability of previous studies is low. Can you hear that horse outside?
Oh yeah, we're definitely you're a mongrel. Why aren't you feeding me?
we're just gonna have to put up with that for a little while.
Just, stop talking to that man and come and to that audience and come and feed me.
Go watch the show. Okay,
you should put a TV in the shed.
So we got 1, 2, 3. What's number 4 thing they said? The current evidence base is insufficient to definitively link. And finally, there is a possible link. So some studies show a link, some studies don't. So let's translate all their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 arguments. Actually say some studies suggest a link, but the quality is poor, so we should do more work. But their conclusion is the data is insufficient to prove a link, therefore there is no link.
Okay.
So they've said, we can't prove this, therefore it's false. A bit like the old existence of God thing. We can't prove it, therefore it's false. No, being unable to prove something does not disprove it. And the astronomer Carl Sagan said this. He may not have been the first one, but he publicised the statement with respect to the existence of life in places other than Earth. He said, we don't know. We don't have any evidence. But he said absence of evidence of extraterrestrial life is not evidence of absence. So the Australian researchers have basically said, we've got no evidence that paracetamol does this, and leaving aside all of the caveats, which were, well, if you did, you would have suppressed it. We know that. But yeah, just because you can't prove something doesn't mean it's not true. It may mean you need to do more research. You haven't disproven it by not proving it. Okay.
Sorry, I was just distracted. I was saying to you earlier that a young bloke copped something to the head. He's showing me his nice little shiner that he's got on the forehead. But anyway, there you
Is
go.
he coming on the show?
No, I can't do that.
So you've got a developing black eye and he's got a knock on the head. It's almost a mandatory report going to come out of this.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, left a mandatory report. Got enough people on the show to be able to mandatory report. Something going on in this house.
All right, so we're moving on. So we got more bad news for the Vaxophiles. Hello, Vaxophiles. With this large study from South Korea, reporting that after they examined the health histories of the entire country, 51 million, they found a dose-dependent increase in vulnerability to other respiratory infections after people were given COVID injections. So here's what it said. Across an entire national data set, this is not a survey, this is all citizens in the country. Each additional COVID-19 vaccine dose corresponded to a higher probability of non-COVID respiratory infection, most severely among children. This study reveals that COVID-19 vaccines have eroded immune function across an entire country and likely the entire globe. And we've worried about this in the past. If for no other reason, then the immune system is critical for preventing cancer, for detecting cancer cells early and mopping them up. And certainly there have been reports of strange and unusual cancers increasing. And so if your immune system is damaged with respect to protection against infection, it's not a long stretch to say, well, maybe it's damaged with respect to mopping up cancer as well.
Yep, and there was, I think, Nicholas Holscher put out a Substack about that just recently. He had an interview, didn't he? And he talked about that extensively.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's another one, Del Bigtree. Yep.
Yep, not quite Nick Holscher, but from the same trusted news network, if I might say so. So a few weeks ago, we talked about, is SIDS SADS? Is SADS SIDS? Are they the same thing? And immediately Grok said, of course, no, there's no evidence that they are. But here's a rare case where the vaccine court in the US admitted or agreed that the 10 vaccines which were given in a visit to an 11-week-old baby were the reason why the baby died shortly thereafter. So let's
10 bloody
10
bloody hell,
and
mate.
Isn't the great disaster here that these kids go and get a well baby visit? They go and see the pediatrician just for a routine checkup, at which they get given toxic products that sometimes kill them. This isn't a kid who had a bad response to surgery, which they needed, or a bad response to antibiotics, which they needed. This was a healthy kid that the parents took along to a pediatrician, an expert that's supposed to look after their health. And in this case, the courts ruled that the injections killed it.
Bloody hell, mate.
Let's read that one.
Bloody hell. And you wonder how much bloody each one of those the pharma companies gets for each one of those. Let's pump 10. You can probably imagine what, $80 a pop or something, probably $800 benefit to the manufacturers
and the pediatricians. Not only do they get their consult fees, they also get bonuses from the vax companies if a certain number of their percentage of their practice is fully vaxxed. So that's why they're so keen. Okay, if you take the kid along and they miss out on a $150 consult fee, whatever, but you might be the key to that practice getting a tens, hundreds of thousands of dollar bonus from the drug companies for reaching a certain high level of compliance.
Something just happened legally, and it was really a landmark decision legally. And author Wayne Rohde, he wrote Vaccine Court, the book. He's one of the world's the leaders of information on the vaccine court. And he wrote this: rare accomplishment in the NVICP, that's National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. Family proves vaccine caused infant death. So let me break this down really quick. For those that don't know, if you've been living under a rock since '86, just a little after that, you can't sue vaccine manufacturers for injuries or death. So you have to go through this special court that is paid for with an excise tax on each vaccine. So the taxpayers pay for this. And you have to go against HHS, which is actually Kennedy right now. You have to go against them. You have to go against Department of Justice attorneys to present a case and use science that's not accepted to make your case to why this vaccine injured you. So a very high bar. But this has just been accomplished by two parents with great expert witnesses. So let's go into this court case, because I want to give the viewers and the listeners kind of an idea what it's like to go through this nightmare. Let's call it that, this legislative nightmare that is the United States NVICP. So we have the actual court case here. It's 53 pages. You can go through the whole thing if you like. I want to pull some of it out. So you see here, the United States Court of Federal Claims, Office of Special Masters, Abigail Sims, Daniel Sims as the parents on behalf of their deceased daughter, AES, versus Secretary of Health and Human Services. So quick background here, you have an 11-week-old baby. Around 11 o'clock a.m., the parents took this baby into a pediatrician's office for a well baby visit. And that baby received pediatrics vaccine, which is a TP vaccine, Hep B, polio vaccine, all packaged in one. They received the Haemophilus influenza vaccine. They received the PCV vaccine. This is a pneumococcal vaccine, and the rotavirus vaccine. All of those at once.
God.
And just a side note here: ACIP, AMA, AAP. There is no upper limit to catch-up vaccines. Now, this wasn't a catch-up vaccine scenario, but when you hear all these vaccines going into this child, there's no upper limit.
Wow.
At one time. So,
and no science,
11 a.m.
as Peter McCullough's study shows, and we've shown no science had ever looked at, can we give all these vaccines at the same time? They just, an assumption. Right. Oh, it's got to be fine to give multiple antigens and adjuvants and all of it all at one time. It's incredible.
Right. The science recommends just an inch apart in the muscle body. You can just get anyway. So we put yourself in this parent's shoes. 11 a.m. well baby visit. Get the vaccines. As far as the court records are concerned, by about 5:45, the father comes in, finds the baby on the back. There was no other obstructions in the crib, and the baby was blue, struggling to breathe. Takes the baby to the hospital. Rushes to the hospital. They try to resuscitate the baby. The baby dies. 11 weeks old. Wow. So here's the court case. Brings in two expert witnesses. One of the expert witnesses is Dr. Schumann. It says this in the court case. In Dr. Schumann's opinion, the DTaP and or the Prevnar 13 vaccinations received on December 16th, 2013 caused encephalopathy and cerebral edema, which pushed down on and caused brainstem herniation affecting respiration and causing cardiopulmonary failure, resulting in death hours after the vaccination. Encephalopathy is brain swelling, causing things like this in the extreme case. So then they have Dr. Gershwin. Dr. Gershwin was another expert witness brought in by the parents. Dr. Gershwin said this: they submitted that AES, that is 11-week-old baby, received multiple vaccines, which caused a cytokine production that is plausible and likely explanation for the cerebral edema and enlarged brain found on autopsy that led to death. Now, the DOJ attorneys that were fighting these parents came in. One of them was Dr. McCusker. Dr. McCusker, as the court document stated in her years of practice, seeing encephalopathic children in the ER, they are not quiet, they're in pain, won't and can't eat, are nauseous, and have severe headache and vomiting. In the court documents, it shows that this child that died had none of that. So they're arguing this can't be encephalopathy because the child didn't have that. This is what I see in my practice. But thank God these expert witnesses came back. Dr. Schumann said this. She added that the younger the baby, the smaller the behavioral repertoire to display autonomic impairment. She said this, quote, young infants don't cry loudly about their distress. They die quietly. So what happens here, if you're a parent trying to seek justice, basically compensation for these injuries, these deaths, there's a table of vaccine injuries you have to follow. These are accepted injuries that are known, that are accepted by the government, and you have to make the case for a table injury. They chose acute encephalopathy. So this was a rapid onset of this brain swelling. Well, the DOJ attorneys actually argued in this case, and they said, because the table injury said it has to be shown, it has to have this acute encephalopathy for 24 hours. The DOJ attorney said, didn't show it for 24 hours. So you technically can't use acute encephalopathy because
Didn't
the baby
show it
died
because they died, right?
Exactly.
So let me just pick up on that. The clip will go on in a minute. But when you take a case to the vaccine court, first of all, there are strict rules about what you're allowed to claim. So you can't just come in with your story and your evidence and say the vaccine killed my kid. No, there are defined arguments that you can make. If beyond that, you're not allowed to take it to court. And remember, the court's the only place you can make these claims. So you're only allowed to make certain claims within the rules. And in this, and you're fighting the government. You know, the defendant in this case is HHS, Department of Human Services. Be like saying our health department. That's who you're fighting. And in this case, according to these are the arguments you're allowed to make, these are the rules, they argued the kid died of encephalopathy. The government, the defendants, argued that, well, it didn't meet the definition because it wasn't sick for 24 hours. Because it died less time than that. It died quicker. But they used that as a defense. They said, well, you know, it doesn't meet the definition because it died too soon. Shocking that they would make this claim. Anyway, it goes on.
Oh my God, these people need to burn in hell. I swear, I don't know how they live with themselves.
They argue that death does not independently establish the existence of this table injury. So it's not just death. You have to have death and acute encephalopathy, which, sorry, the kid wasn't alive for 24 hours. That's what you go against. And thank God this special masters ruled rarely on this case for the parents. And they said this in conclusion: upon careful evaluation of all the evidence submitted in this matter, the medical records, the testimony of petitioners and the experts, and the medical literature, I find that petitioners have shown that they are entitled to compensation under the Vaccine Act. Accordingly, this matter shall proceed to damages. So I believe it's $300,000 they receive with attorney's fees and whatever the DOJ attorneys were paid. I mean, this becomes a wash because the attorney's fees become so much. But what we're seeing here is this movement now away. It's not SIDS. It's not sudden infant death syndrome. This is vaccine-induced infant death. This is a whole different term that the medical community, the legal community is accepting and needs to accept.
So
that's shocking.
That's what you're up against. But these parents managed to navigate all of that and get the court to agree, yes, the 10 or 11 vaxxers that your 11-week-old baby got were the cause of its death a few hours later. Wow.
It's shocking, but I mean, we see that we see that even through COVID here in everything. Any time someone wanted to bring up something about their injury and all that, Melissa McCann's legal case and all that sort of stuff, it's stonewall after stonewall after stonewall, and it's really just because, you know, safe and effective, the science is there and everything else like that. These poor people for decades have been up against it, and like you say, you've just demonstrated, or they've just demonstrated, the hoops that people have to jump through just to be able to get it recognised as an injury. So it's shocking, mate.
It is shocking. And of course, if you do a quick check of the Googles, you'll straight away find out that vaccines are not the cause of SIDS. They're not the cause. Now, this is a variant of the old "we have no evidence that" argument. You know, same as for autism. We have no evidence that vaccines cause autism. Because A, the studies aren't done. If they are done and they find out a problem, they suppress it. And they don't collect the relevant data. So, for example, this next segment from the same story explains that Florida is actually just passed a law that says where there's a case of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, the coroner doing the investigation has to look at the kid's vaccination record. Now, you would think that was relevant.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't think you'd need a law saying that. You know, the first thing you do when you see a patient, dead or alive, is you ask, what's your history? And if the history included 11 vaccines 5 hours before the baby dropped dead, you shouldn't need a law saying, well, you have to ask for that. It should be a routine part of it. You know, they're going to screen for all sorts of other things, but something as basic as this, given the concern, why did Florida even have to pass a law that says you have to look at this?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people would argue, Bruce, that even all across the world now is that anybody that happens to die suddenly, the prerequisite is to ask if they've actually had a vaccination of some sort.
Not only that, they need to take tissue samples in the case of COVID and look for, well, what was the cause of death? If it was cancer, you need to do pathology on the cancer, see if there's spike protein in it. If they've had a sudden cardiac death, you want to see if there's spike protein in the heart.
Yep.
You shouldn't have to point these things out.
And it's actually happening legally in a state called Florida. We have Ileana Garcia. She is a senator in Florida. She has put forth Bill 188. And this bill says this: in the case of an infant or child who dies suddenly and unexpectedly, including cases of SIDS, SUID, that's sudden unexpected infant death, and sudden death of a young SDY, the autopsy must include microscopic and toxicology studies and a review of the child's immunization and medical records. It's astonishing it doesn't have this already, but now this is mandated.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing that you have to tell pathologists to look at the history of the patient, especially the recent medical history? You know, if somebody dies within 30 days of an operation, they hold an inquiry into it. Within 30 days of an operation. These kids are dying within hours of the shots, and we don't know because nobody looked at the records. It's not one of your check boxes. That's why they get to say, well, there's no evidence that vaccines cause SIDS. Not because they don't, it's because there's no evidence. They're admitting it.
Check boxes deliberately left off in many cases. It's like, yep.
I bet they'll have a checkbox for gender and Aboriginality.
Well, they do. But anyway, it's a whole other topic, isn't it?
And just a little bit of a detail. We've already explained that the vaccine court was a specific court set up in America in 1980, I think, 6. After the vaccine manufacturers were granted immunity from liability for people who claimed that they'd been damaged by the company's products. And by the way, no other medical drug has liability protection. You know, you can sue the manufacturer if you think their antidepressants harmed you, or their cancer drugs harmed you, their antibiotics harmed you, whatever, or your hip implant or your pelvic mesh, you can sue them. The only medical drug / procedure you're not allowed to sue the manufacturer for is vaccines. And the history of that is in 1986, the vaccine manufacturers were getting sued so often by people saying, I was damaged by your product, my kid was damaged by your product. That was happening so often that the vaccine manufacturers were worried they were going to go broke. So they ran to government, they ran to President Reagan and said, we're going to stop making these products if we keep getting sued. So instead of Reagan saying, might be a good thing, he said, okay, we'll set up this special vaccine court and we'll give you immunity to prosecution. So you are not liable if your products kill people, and we'll have a special compensation court. And we've just shown you how difficult it is to get a positive result in that compensation court.
Yep. So the manufacturer's off the hook. The manufacturer's off the hook, but the taxpayer ends up having to pay for the injuries caused by the manufacturer because the government's put that scheme in place.
Well, they don't have to pay much because given that you are fighting the government, which is clearly captured by pharma, then it's pretty rare for a positive result in the vaccine court. But look back to 1980, whenever it was, the key point here is the vaccine manufacturer said, we are getting our asses sued off by people who say that they're being damaged by our products, and we need to be protected against consumers. That's what they said. They admitted these products are so dangerous that we can't keep making them unless we've got immunity. And that would have been a great chance for the government to say, well, free market, all right. But no, they got captured as well. So they set up this sham court that hardly ever gives positive results. And the big thing for the manufacturer is that from then on, they could do what they like. You know, normally you've got a economic incentive for a manufacturer not to make dangerous products because they will get sued. You know, if they recall toys every Christmas because they got button batteries or spiky things or inhalation or, you know, toddlers' garments that are flammable. The manufacturers don't like making dangerous products because they lose money. So they have an incentive to make their products safe, except for vaccines. There is no risk to the manufacturer in making a dangerous product. And the vaccine schedules exploded since they got liability protection. Does not matter.
Yeah, it's bloody ridiculous. No, I'd say, look, I don't know so much about Trump now, Leona. There's a lot of people questioning where he's at the moment. Even people like Nicholas Hulscher and others are questioning about the motives of what he's doing at the moment. Yep, me as well, from what I'm seeing, unfortunately.
He gives all the impressions of being captured by the machine. In fact, the only person in the Trump administration that I still hold some hope for is RFK Jr., who just strikes me as a totally genuine guy. But all the other people who were supposed to come in and clean house, look at the FBI, look at Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. There is no Epstein files. He killed himself, etc., etc. And they're doing it. It's like a hostage video. Their eyes are this big. You know, you can tell they're lying. When they got into power, they were taken into a room and they were told something or shown something, and they went, crap, there's a really big picture here that we didn't know about, and we can't do what we said we'd do. We can't be honest with this. They're covering for something.
Yep.
And that's obvious. And the only one who I don't get that impression of is RFK Jr. Now, I don't doubt he's being stymied and blocked at everything, but if he turns out to be not genuine, I will really have no hope left for humanity.
Yeah, it's not looking good, is it? And just in regards to the vaccine compensation thing, well, you see, bloody, our government did the same. It couldn't afford to do it anymore. It only had a limit to how many people that they'd pay compensation to before they canned it. Yes, you were forced by the states. Yes, we mandated it. There was mandates and all that, and that we'll protect those of you that got injured. And then the vaccine compensation scheme ended after a certain period of time, with likely many thousands of Australians still suffering and not getting anything for it.
And that's COVID you're talking about, obviously.
Yeah, that's COVID. That's not the sort of the more general vaccine, the childhood vaccine schedule, all that.
Yep. All right, what do we got here? Good to see another person using my diet story for success. Although it looks in this case as if David Reynolds actually slightly preceded me, because this story said that David Reynolds has been on a radical diet for the last 8 years. Now, do you know what that radical diet was?
Well, knowing you and what you're going to be talking about, it's going to be meat, Bruce.
It was the carnivore diet. Shock horror. He was eating our ancestrally appropriate food. And as I've said before, if you think the Aborigines were hunter-gatherers, you take a walk through the bush and you tell me any plant that they can eat. The only things I see edible, and I live in bush, I'm in Western Victoria, the only things around me that are edible are rabbits, which are introduced, and kangaroos. There is nothing growing in the native bush that's edible. Nothing.
They're witchy grubs, Bruce.
They're animals. They're animals.
They're true too.
Okay. So David Reynolds, who's a V8 supercar driver, he tells the story here that when he got to 40, he thought, I'm going to try this carnivore diet thing because I'm training hard, I'm fit, but I'm getting the extra kilo creeping on every year. And I don't know how he heard about it, but he went, I'm going to try this carnivore thing. And this is 8 years ago. And I think it was about 7 years ago for me. And here's a few of the positives he's come up with. He said, I had chronic back pain generally, a lot of the time, and it just went away. It just disappeared. I had a really itchy scalp, quite dandruffy, itchy a lot of the time, and that just resolved itself within a few days. So both of those are inflammatory symptoms. Arthritis is an inflammatory disorder, and dandruff is an inflammatory disorder. He said initially he dropped weight quickly, losing 10 kilos within a couple of months, but has since steadied. That's exactly what I got. I dropped about 10 kilos and then pretty much held, although I've been cheating a bit lately, so I might have slipped a kilo or two back on. And that's the thing. You basically drop to your ideal weight when you're putting meat in your mouth instead of carbohydrates. Because carbohydrates get turned into fat. And if you stop eating that, you stop making fat. And your body has a weight thermostat. Same as got a cholesterol and a temperature thermostat. It knows what weight it wants to be at. And if you feed it the right fuel, it will hit that target weight. If you con it by giving carbohydrates, it pumps out insulin and says, oh no, sugar, I've got to drag that into the liver. And the liver then goes, what am I supposed to do with this? Oh no, I'll make fat. That's why carbohydrates put weight. And finally, he said, my cholesterol went through the roof. That went sky high. My testosterone went sky high too. So first off, cholesterol. Now, that's what we call an irrelevant surrogate marker. So people who say that the carnivore diet is dangerous will say that. They'll say, will your cholesterol go up? And I say, so what? Tell me about my health. Don't tell me about a number that you measure with a blood test. Remember, because that's how they diagnosed COVID. You didn't have to be sick. You just had to hit a certain number. So that's an invalid surrogate marker. And they used the same thing to say that the COVID vaccines were effective. They said, well, if we give you the shot, your antibodies go up X%. Well, who cares? I want to know if I get the disease after the shot, not what my antibody number goes to. And as the Korean study showed, the more shots you got, the more COVID you got. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter whether your antibodies changed or not. Anyway, the critics will say, oh, you can't do that because your cholesterol go up. So he's just listed all the health benefits and they've said, oh, but we can measure a number that doesn't look good. And if, like me, you believe that's an irrelevant number, you don't care. Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing he said there is my testosterone went sky high as well. Well, guess what testosterone's made out of? Starts with a C. Mm-hmm.
Cholesterol, is it?
Oh, it's a precursor to a whole lot of hormones. So, yeah, no surprise. And I'm going to cover this at some stage in a future show, but almost all of the things which our wise rulers tell us is good for us destroy testosterone. So not going out in the sun destroys it. Eating carbohydrates and soy destroys it. And in this case, statins destroy it. You know, if you drop your cholesterol, that destroys your testosterone as well. So it's almost as if our wise rulers didn't want men having high testosterone. It's almost like that, isn't it?
Well, it's like everything that they're doing, Bruce, is designed to, not have strong, healthy men to defend things, and everything else they're doing to undermine the family and everything. It's almost like it's an agenda, Bruce. Everything.
They want to emasculate men. They want to castrate them. They want to get them on feminizing hormones. Start with the kids, plus all the things I've just talked about. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it was a plan.
Yeah, almost, Bruce, almost.
And by the way, that's what we do to our livestock. You know, farmers don't have many intact male animals running around the paddocks because they're too troublesome. Mm-hmm. Most of them get their nuts chopped off to make them easier to handle.
Going to go and shag everything too.
Well. Now, what do the experts say in response to David Reynolds reporting, I've been doing this for 8 years and I've got some great health benefits out of it? Well, the British Heart Foundation said, oh, this is not healthy because your cholesterol and your fats will go up. And we've just discussed that. That's called an irrelevant surrogate marker. Doesn't matter if you're more healthy, your cholesterol number's bad. Well, so what? I'm more healthy. But if you actually believe that cholesterol matters, and I've said many times, I don't believe it does. If you really want to know if you've got coronary disease, why not look at whether you've got coronary disease rather than just, let's check the number, some irrelevant surrogate marker. If you think I might have coronary disease, why don't you look whether I've got coronary disease? And of course you can do that. And that's by getting a calcium score. Now, a calcium score is where you do a CT of the heart and you look for calcium in the coronaries, because when you get a plaque, it scars and leaves calcium. So he did that and his calcium score was 0, which means at age, I'm guessing he's mid-40s at this point, he has 0 evidence of coronary disease in his mid-40s, despite having an extremely stressful job. He's a race car driver. This guy's heart is doing 160 to 180 beats per minute regularly, when he's doing 270 kilometres an hour down Conrod Straight in the rain. So instead of being fobbed off by the British Heart Foundation saying, test this irrelevant surrogate marker, and if the number's bad, you should go on statins, he said, no, I'm going to actually look and see whether I need statins. That's if you believe that, which I don't. But actually went, no, I'm going to I'll have a coronary calcium, thanks. And that's what I would tell anybody. If your doctor's badgering into statins, say, well, prove it. Give me a calcium scan. Let's see what the number is. That's what I'd be doing. But of course, most people don't know about that. Most GPs don't offer it. I've had a calcium scan because I went and asked the GP to do it. And I had to sort of twist his arm a bit. So,
so if you ask them for that, do they have a right to refuse you doing a test, mate?
Well, any doctor's got the right to not order a treatment if they don't agree that it's in your best interests, and I support that. But it also means I'd immediately fire that person as my doctor because they know less than I do.
Fair enough.
And I'd also point them to the guidelines, including the Australian guidelines, which say this calcium score is a relevant measure for assessing cardiovascular disease. So if they don't do it, it's just because either they haven't done their homework and or they're more interested in pushing statins. And on the topic of statins, I went to GP a few weeks ago with a friend / relative of mine who had a serious medical condition to discuss. They'd had a CT scan which suggested they had a brain tumour. And they took me along as a sort of mentor translator because they, having found this, which was on an incidental scan because they'd had an accident and got a CT head scan, one of the things that came back was, oh, you better get this checked out. So this relative had to go to the GP to get a referral to a surgeon to get it checked out. And that GP at this consult for I need a referral for a brain tumour consult, that GP badgered this patient about statins. Can you believe that?
No.
At which point I said to the GP, wait. I turned to the patient, I said, just confirm I'm here as your advocate and I can speak for you, correct? The patient said yes. I turned back to the GP and I said, I'm telling you here, the patient has told you they are not interested in discussing statins. If you continue to badger them about that, that is bullying, and you are refusing to acknowledge the patient's autonomy, and that's unprofessional conduct, and I will report you to the medical board. Do you understand? At which the GP said, oh, sorry, I didn't hear.
Of course not. How convenient. Selective hearing, though, is Bruce, I think. Yeah.
Sorry, you didn't hear this patient saying, the hospital told me I could have a brain tumour and I need a consult. You didn't hear that? Are you deaf or incompetent? I didn't say that. But you see what I'm saying? GPs have been captured to work for the drug companies. They don't work for the patients anymore.
Yeah. Well, guess what, Bruce? I think Dan wants to be your doctor. He's gone, bloody hell, I agree with Bruce. If he had clean coronaries, let him eat his steak. And he said CT coronary angiography is better than a calcium score.
Good. And it's nice to see that we agree on that. That's really good.
Yeah, but he did pull you up a bit further. He said he did put some comments in, which I did flash up. So to be fair, you can't say that I'm censoring you at all, Dan. So there you
And
go.
that's true. And when I'm ranting, obviously I'm not reading the comments as well. So
No, that's exactly right.
Yep.
So we're chucking it out there. So putting it up there so people, if they want to go and check out your comments on the Rumble there, Dan, people can look at your point of view as well. That's the beauty of being able to share this.
yeah, and nice to see you back. Of course, my other favourite contributor is Carla. Where's Carla? Is anyone?
Yeah, I don't know. She was probably asleep as well. No, she missed it. Anyway, she'll catch up. Maybe she'll jump on 5 minutes before and go, oh, damn, I slept in.
Okay, so moving on from David Reynolds said he went carnivore 7 years ago. He was told, oh, my God, your cholesterol go up. You better go on statins. And he got a calcium score instead. And I said, well, the British Heart Foundation should be called the British Statin Foundation. Why did I say that? Because they admit it in their on their homepage. So here's what they say. The BHF states that statins are a cornerstone of cardiovascular disease prevention, significantly reducing the risk of heart attacks and strokes by lowering harmful cholesterol levels. So the BHF, which criticised Dave Reynolds for going on a healthy diet, admits that no, they would have told him to take statins. And if you want to know more about what's called the cholesterol heart hypothesis, that being that heart disease is caused by cholesterol, which is caused by diet and genetics, and you should take drugs to drop your cholesterol. The counterpoint to that are these two books by Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, who's a Scottish doctor, I think, certainly in the UK. And I've read them both, and they're both great. And Malcolm Kendrick questions the cholesterol hypothesis by raising a number of inconsistencies with it. So, for example, he says, how come some people with high cholesterol don't have any heart disease? How come some people with low cholesterol do? You know, they don't have that Bradford Hill, more exposure equals more effect. How come heart disease and vascular disease is patchy? So if you get a smoker who's got widely disseminated vascular disease, and you look at their aorta, there are bits of it that are normal and there are bits of it that are badly plaqued, right next to each other. They're both exposed to the same blood. So how come? He said, how is it that the arteries get vascular disease, but the veins don't? They've both got the same blood running through them. So if it's simply a matter that the cholesterol's soaking from the blood into the vessel wall and causing it, explain that one to me. And he raises the alternative hypothesis about heart disease, which is vascular disease. He says what actually happens is for some reason you get a injury to the slippery inner lining of the vessel. So the inner lining of a blood vessel, an artery in particular, is extremely slippery because it's got a glycocalyx, a lubricant layer there, which is as slippery as a fish. Fish have glycocalyx on the outside. You pick up a fish, and it's for the same reason. The fish can slip through the water because of its glycocalyx, and blood can slip through an artery for the converse reason. Anyway, he says, for whatever reason, here and there in a vessel, you get an injury. Maybe it's because of the mechanical stress of it moving. You know, it's a fatigue thing. Maybe it's because you've got toxins in your environment. Cigarettes are a great cause. Diabetes is a great cause. For whatever reason, you get a little defect in that skin lining on the inside of an artery. And anywhere else in your body, if you knock a bit of skin off, you put a clot there, and after it heals underneath, the clot falls off. You can't do that in your blood vessels, and you particularly can't do it in your heart, because when the clot falls off, it goes downstream and gives you a stroke. So the normal repair mechanism you have anywhere else in your body where you get a clot, heal under it, and then the clot falls off, you can't do that inside a vessel. So he says what happens instead is you do get a clot, and then the lining grows over it to stop it running off downstream. And then your immune system sends cells in there which chews it up and gets rid of it. That's why you end up with cholesterol in these plaques, in these defects in the vessels, because red cells are full of it. So if you put a blood clot there made out of red cells, and then you seal it over and internalize it into the vessel wall, well, of course it's full of cholesterol because it's made out of red cells. So that's Malcolm Kendrick's argument, and I think it's got merit. So if you're interested in looking further, grab yourself them two books, highly recommended, on the Amazons. And I would certainly do it before I admit or I let a GP give me a statin, because I think statins are poisons with large numbers of side effects. And if I was still unsure, I'd say to the GP, you prove I need it by giving me a calcium scan. And if your GP won't do that, I'd fire your GP.
There you go.
Right, so we're out of that. You, Dr. Dan can slip away now, I suppose.
Yeah.
Where are we at in the finances? Where are we at in the finances? So quick run through the cross rates. Gold's up 1.7% against the Australian dollar. Silver's up 4.3%, and Bitcoin's down 9%. And poor old Bitcoin's been getting hammered lately. And as I've said in the past, Bitcoin is an extremely volatile asset. Can go up or down 10 or 20% in a day, 50% in a month. But that volatility is nevertheless on a relentless upward trajectory. And the reason why I can sit quietly at the moment watching gold go up and Bitcoin go down is because I actually remember a few years ago when a gold coin and a Bitcoin cost the same thing. They're about 1,600 Australian dollars at the time. Because I remember saying to people, you know, the gold coin and a Bitcoin's the same price. So since then, gold's gone from 1,600 to 6,000, and Bitcoin's gone from 1,600 to 150,000. If you get a short-term drop off, not something I'll be worried about. But the reason I say this is these are all sound money, and if you want to hide your money from government inflationary theft, you have to understand about these. If Bitcoin's too bouncy a ride for you, then maybe precious metals are where you should be looking. Not financial advice. I'm wrong about everything. The experts have told me so.
Yep, put that disclaimer in everything. None of it is medical or financial advice. It's do your own due diligence.
Now, speaking of silver, I did say, I think last week, that the US has added silver to their critical minerals list. Well, guess what? So's the New South Wales government. I didn't even know the New South Wales government had a critical minerals and metals list, but they have. And there's the 5 things on their list, and silver's in it. So even the New South Wales government agrees that silver is a critical metal for the reasons we've talked about before. You know, it's used for solar, it's used for electric vehicles, it's used for missiles, etc., etc. And for that reason, I'm expecting silver to have a lot more upside than gold, although I think they both have upside left in them.
Yep.
And despite its recent price weakness, Bitcoin is also increasingly being viewed as a strategic asset by governments. And here's another one, with Taiwan floating the idea of having a governmental Bitcoin strategic reserve. So I think, like silver, that's going to be a upward nudge in the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Now, this week, also, the US government ended their longest ever shutdown. So what happens in a shutdown is that the Congress refuses to pass what they call appropriations bills. So in other words, the government doesn't have any money to spend. In order for governments to spend money, they have to have parliamentary approval. And the Democrats and the Republicans have been fighting over that for the last 43 days, although it's just ended. But I thought I'd read you some of the things from this, because there was a huge amount of angst amongst certain sections of the US population during the closure because they weren't getting their handouts. So government employees weren't getting paid, welfare recipients weren't getting paid. So I got this from the Patriot Post. So here's a few lessons for leftists. Government dependency is not freedom. EBT cards, they're your food cards, if you like, don't work without taxpayers. Your survival should not require Congress to clock in. No work equals no money equals no government handouts. If your life collapses because the government hit pause, you're not oppressed, you're dependent. If you panic when the benefits stop, you've given the government total power over you. A government that feeds you can just as easily starve you. The purpose of a job is not only to support you, it's to keep the government from owning you.
Yep.
We saw all of that during COVID because the great majority of people who would like to have not complied but did are the ones who said, I need the money. So one reason I was able to not comply is because I assumed the government would do something like this day, and I made sure that I didn't need the money.
Yeah, good on you. Well, I took the principled stand, even though we possibly couldn't have afforded at the time, and I went, stuff you, not ruling me, and we'll see wherever this takes us. And it nearly took me to the knees, but I've come out of it the other end. So, but this is exactly right. Exactly the point you're making is absolutely right. And the caveat, obviously, for that is that people living with a disability and people that can't go and fend for themselves. There's obviously going to be a something within society to be able to, for us to be able to look at being able to support them with as part of our humanity. We shouldn't be forced to, but I think that's in the past it used to be people willingly supporting elderly and people living with disabilities that couldn't fend for themselves. People willingly, just the natural part of humanity, looked after people. So that would be the only caveat I'll put on that.
Well, and I'm not disagreeing with you. So if you're in a position where you could suddenly become vulnerable, or that you will in the future, then just as you and I save for a rainy day, you can actually save goodwill in exactly the same way. So if you're a good family member and a good neighbour and a good community citizen and you fall on hard times, people will help you because you've already up front. You have saved in advance the goodwill that you might then cash in from your kids or your neighbours or whatever. Now, if you've been a total dick and been rude and unpleasant to everybody, when you break your ankle and you can't get around, guess what? Your neighbours don't care. Your family doesn't care. So you've got to earn your charity in advance. That's how you deal with those situations. There are alternatives to government charity. And remember, government charity is it's compulsory charity. It's taking my money and giving it to someone that I don't know, don't like, or don't think should get it. If you want my charity, how about you earn it?
Yep. No, absolutely. And I've seen this come through. I was going to share a good friend from Adelaide, actually watching the show, and wanted to share that from Michael. And
yes.
I was going to read this out. So read this little post out from Australia's M3 money supply has increased from $1.8 trillion in 2015 to $3.3 trillion in 2025. That's an increase of 83% in just a decade. In other words, a significant proportion of Australia's total money supply has been created in the last 10 years, and that flood of new money has been deeply inflationary. It's why we still feel pain at the checkout. Inflation quietly erodes your buying power. The more money sloshing around the system, the less each existing dollar is worth. The government, the Reserve Bank, and the retail banks, who have been behind the massive increase in the money supply, have avoided major criticism because most of the media doesn't understand what's going on. Let's look at gold. Today, an ounce of gold buys 6,250 Australian dollars. A decade ago, an ounce of gold bought 1,500, like you were just saying. That means in the space of just 10 years, the Australian dollar is now worth 4 times less in terms of gold. Now look at housing. That 1.2 million home in Adelaide, it was around 600,000 just 5 years ago. In the same house, same roof, same street. The structure itself has depreciated, yet the price you pay has doubled. This shouldn't be surprising. Australia abandoned the gold standard, which fixed the value of the nation's currency to that gold in 1932. We have fully embraced the fiat currency model. The value of our dollar now depends largely on trust and the discipline of those issuing it. Increased printing, borrowing, and lending expands the money supply, inevitably placing downward pressure on the value of existing dollars. When it comes to money, more is not always better. And that was from our good friend Michael.
I think Michael might have been watching the show.
Yes, he's also in finance. That helps.
And a couple of things about inflation. When precious metals were money, there were periods of centuries when the inflation rate was effectively zero. Centuries we had stability in the purchasing power of money. But since they abandoned it in 73, we've lost 90% of the value in my lifetime.
Yep.
The other point I want to make is that it's not normal for prices to stay the same even, let alone to go up. The natural trend for prices over time is to go down as people who are making whatever the good is have had more time to work out how to make it more efficiently and more cheaper. They've got better machines, better marketing, better processes, better software, you name it. So even if the inflation rate was zero, that's not even normal because it actually should go down over time. You think computers have got much cheaper, phones have got cheaper, LASIK eye surgery used to cost you $5,000. All those things have gotten cheaper, and they're free market things, because the manufacturers have got better at making them. So it's not natural for prices to go up over time. Certainly not natural for them to go up 10% a year, which, as we've discussed, is a rough guide for the actual inflation rate. They should stay steady, and in fact, they should trend down over time. They really should.
You gave that good example with your favourite ice cream, the Splice.
Yeah. Yes. Righto. Well, diversity is strength. So, very nice example here of Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. So, this New Zealand basketball team have said they will not wear Pride jerseys for the coming Pride round in Australia because it conflicts with the religious and cultural beliefs of some of their own players. And this is great because the DEI people are always saying we have to respect the beliefs and views of others. If I want to say I'm a cat, you have to respect that. You can't question it. If I want to say I'm a woman, I'm allowed to say that. You have to respect that. And if you don't respect my opinion about that, that's hateful. Similarly, we have to celebrate Aboriginal culture, even if it's violent and dangerous, because culture's sacrosanct, etc., etc., etc. So this New Zealand basketball team has said, yeah, great, we can play by those rules. We're not going to wear the jerseys because on cultural grounds, this goes against the culture of some of our players. So how do you come back from that? It's great. And it's an example of Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. So Saul Alinsky was a leftist activist in America who wrote this book about how to agitate for change. It's called Rules for Radicals. So here's a few of his rules. Rule number 4, make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. Well, this is exactly what that club has just done. They've said, sorry, we can't wear the jerseys because it's a cultural clash, and you know how important multiculturalism is. Now, I used exactly the same thing with SA Ambulance when they forced me to do Aboriginal cultural awareness training, or as I called it at the time, white man bad training. And at the end of that online training package, there was a quiz. You had to, prove that you were competent. So I answered the quiz, I believe, honestly and correctly. And to my shock, at the end of it, I only scored 9% correct, which meant that I was not yet competent in that module. Which meant that after a while, my supervisor came around and said, you have to resit that module because you failed it. And I said, I couldn't possibly resit that. I found it offensive.
Fair enough.
You have to respect, you can't offend people, So, and you know what? I never reset it.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
Right,
stick to your principles.
Rule number 5, ridicule. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. There is no defense. It is almost impossible to counterattack ridicule. It also infuriates the opposition, who then react to your advantage. And this is one of the conservatives' main weapons against leftists. They have no sense of humor. If you make them look stupid, they hate it. Trump's been doing this recently by mocking up photos of Democrat politicians with big sombreros on. So remember that. Ridicule is a far better weapon against a leftist than a smart reply or an argument. And finally, rule 13, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. And remember, these are rules for radicals. In other words, these are rules for leftists. And what rule 13 does, it illustrates what the left does all the time. They personally attack their opponents. Ad hominem attacks, as that Labor senator was doing. They make it personal.
Yeah, well, Phil's just on the same wavelength as you. Are you okay, Senator?
Good on you, Phil.
That's misogynistic. When Phil was on your wavelength right there, mate. He was on yours.
Good on you.
And for those of you that jumped on the show late, there was some clips and videos I showed at the beginning.
And then you follow it up by saying, "Well, I'm sorry, I couldn't assume your gender."
What is a woman? What is a woman? Tell me first.
And again, they just got to hate that because they have no sense of humor.
Well, no, they just went absolutely crazy on it, didn't they?
We use the term ape shit. All right, so one here for the don't believe anything till it's been officially denied files. So Liberal leader Susan Ley has denied that there are increasing deflections within the Liberal Party over her climate change policy. So she was asked about that. Was she worried that she's losing support amongst her MPs because of that? So she said no. She denied it was a problem. So there we go. She's denied basically that her leadership is under threat over this issue, which, as Bismarck said, just proves that it's actually true. Otto Bismarck being a German chancellor in the late 1800s. So, and I think Sir Humphrey used to say that in Yes Minister as well. All right. On to zombie stories that will not die. Now, the gender story will not die. I think this is the third week that we've come back to this. With this ABC story reporting on the findings of the Australian Centre for Gender Equality at Work, whatever the hell that is, noting that they have a new measuring tool, the Gender Equality at Work Index, and that new index is showing persistent inequality. And again, if you want to examine the evidence, not only do we know this cannot be true because it's illegal, and if so, you should be calling the police, not the media. But They then use another example of that false debating tactic of using irrelevant surrogate measures. So they've said that women are just as qualified by the fact that they have higher rates of bachelor level education than men. Okay, so that's an irrelevant surrogate. They're saying women are at least as good, if not better, workers because they've got more bachelor's degrees. But in what? I don't care if my electrician's got a bachelor's degree in psychology. I don't care if my plumber has. I don't care if my truck driver has. That's an irrelevant surrogate. That doesn't mean they're as good at the job as men are. But that's the implication.
Got a what is it? A PhD in breakdancing, Bruce, and then go to the Olympics.
In gender basket pottery or something. But then they sort of nuke their own argument by listing all the real reasons that women, on average, over the course of a year, earn less money than men. So they have lower rates. There's not as many in the workforce. They work fewer hours. They work in less skilled jobs, lower level jobs, which have lower pay. So this is not a gender gap. This is a participation gap. It's an hours worked gap. It's a skills gap. But they've just told us that no, women are better workers than men because they've got bachelor's degrees. Well, half a paragraph later, they tell us the real reasons. And as I mentioned before, if women were really 20% cheaper to hire than men, all businesses would immediately sack all the men and hire women. So there'd be an immense demand for female workers who would, by the way, then see their pay rates go up because there's a demand for them. Whereas the men would have to start discounting their services. So it's all BS. And it's usually using these irrelevant measures like average income over a year. How many hours did they work? How much overtime did they do? What level were they working at? They're the real reasons. This article then told a whopper. They said the jobs that women work have poorer levels of safety than men. So not only are they more skilled workers, but they're doing dangerous jobs. So surely they should be getting paid more than men. Well, that immediately, didn't sound right to me. So I went to the Googles and went, okay, what are the most dangerous occupations in Australia? And this is on a deaths per 100,000 workers basis. Okay, not overall number, it's the deaths per. So the most dangerous ones are listed there. So the highest deaths per 100,000 is agriculture, forestry and fishing, followed by transport, followed by mining, followed by construction, followed by infrastructure. So gas, water, electricity. Now, are any of those top 5 most dangerous occupations dominated by women?
All right.
As we were told, the women are working in areas that have poorer safety levels than men. Well, except for the top 5 most dangerous jobs. They're not dominating those, are they? So this newspaper told us a whopper. And in fact, if you look at the typical jobs that are dominated by women, teaching and nursing, healthcare would certainly be high on the list. So look at the deaths per 100,000 for teaching and for healthcare, 0.6 and 0.2 per 100,000. Compare that to the jobs dominated by men, 10, 7.5, 3.6, 2.8. All of these are like more than 10 times more dangerous than the jobs that women are doing. And yet they told us a whopper here and said, not only are we not paying women properly, even though they're better educated, but they're doing the dangerous work.
They can't make up their mind, can they? It's a bit airy-fairy, isn't it?
Well, it's just a reminder, the media lies all the time about everything. And I usually say that about government. And of course, I don't know there's much difference between government and media, do you?
Yep. Well, Nick goes, well, in Victoria, if you're a teacher, you're probably exposed to machete teens down here.
Well,
Yeah.
question. Yeah, look, fair point. But are those machete teens going to school, or is it the
Yeah,
coppers who have to
probably not.
confront them? Is it the
Yeah.
police who have to confront them in the streets? So I'm not
Mm.
sure that holds up, you know.
Mm.
Anyway, that's all fixed because we got machete bins now.
Mm. Yeah. the cheap machete bins. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, enough of that. Here's another story that will not die, and that's the good old Indigenous cricketer story. So this story tells us that Australia's about to get its third ever Indigenous Test cricketer. And the whole story is I'm special because I'm Indigenous and I'm about to play Test cricket. And so what this tells us that the third recipient of this prestigious honour is set to be Brendan Doggett. Now, I haven't heard of Brendan Doggett. So I Googled him. There's a picture of Brendan Doggett in the red hat there. And just beside him, photoshopped in, they're the other two Indigenous cricketers. So we've got Julian Gillespie, and we've talked about that before, and I think Scott Boland. So again, I mean, I'm old-fashioned. I would not look at him and immediately go, wow, you're the third ever Indigenous Test cricketer, aren't you? In fact, if I wanted to discriminate against him for skin colour, I wouldn't know how to. He would need to tell me that he was Indigenous so as I could. Anyway, this just reinforces what's been a personal policy of mine for a long time, and that is always tick the Indigenous box wherever you can, because everybody's Indigenous now, obviously. There are no standards.
Well, we know, Bruce, if you look at etymology online, and words matter, as you know, and Indigenous actually means born of. Oh, am I gazumping you? Well, anyway, sorry, I'll shut up then. I'll shut up. Give myself an uppercut.
I'm one slide away. Now, here, by the way, is a picture of Australia's first Indigenous cricket team that toured England. This wasn't a test level tour. They played some 43 club level matches. But this was in 1868, where this Indigenous cricketers team from Western Victoria went to England and played. And I have no idea how the matches went. Do you notice any differences between these Indigenous cricketers and these Indigenous cricketers?
Well, there's some differences, isn't there?
Might have to ask the Groks just to narrow it down a bit. Yep. I did notice a difference, I think. And both of these stories tend to use the words Indigenous and Aboriginal interchangeably, which they are not. Same as sex and gender are used interchangeable, which they're not. And by interchanging them, you get to use one word which means the other. So, for example, what does the word Aboriginal mean? So, dictionary definition, a member of a race of people who were the first people to live in a country before any colonists arrived. That's the definition of Aboriginal. So, question, how do we know they were the first people? And we've looked into evidence in the past that perhaps they weren't, and that they may have actually exterminated earlier inhabitants. And secondly, surely the Aborigines, by that definition, were the first colonists. Did they not colonise Australia before the British? Were they not already here all over it? Now, secondly, Indigenous, the other word that's used interchangeably and isn't. Indigenous means produced, growing, living or occurring natively or naturally in a particular region. I know you've got German background. Where were you born, Mark?
I was born in Australia, mate. That makes me Indigenous.
And did you occur naturally, or was there some sort of artificiality about your conception?
I hope it was natural, mate. I was hatched. We used to say to my brother that he was hatched, but anyway.
Well, I believe I'm the same. I believe I occurred naturally in Australia. So I repeat what I said. Tick the Indigenous box. We're both Indigenous.
Mm-hmm.
Tick it.
Yep. Exactly right. Well, we are. There we go.
Time check. Gosh, are we up to 2 hours 13? Wow.
We are.
Fortunately, we're now into the last segment, so nobody panic. So Mythbusters segment. And have I got some good stuff coming up over the next few weeks? So here's a couple of things I'm going to look at for this segment, going downstream a bit. I'm going to ask whether oil is a fossil fuel or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's based on some reading that I've been doing. So the conventional story we've got with oil is that oil is a biological material which then gets geologically altered. So foliage rots down, falls in swamps, gets buried, eventually gets compressed by the rock and turns into coal or gas or oil. So that's the conventional theory, the biological origins of hydrocarbon fuels. And that's why we call them fossil fuels. Although, fun fact, you do find the odd fossil in coal, but you don't find many. So when you think about it, if coal supposedly formed from these ancient trees and palms and fronds and ferns that all fell into a swamp and got compressed down, coal should be 100% fossils because it's made out of leaves and sticks and stuff. It should be all through it with fossils. And yet they find the odd fossil in it, often beautifully preserved. What happened to all the others that were all around it? Why is there no trace of them? So that's one interesting question. So the Russians, on the other hand, they don't believe that oil is a biological product. They believe it's a geological product that's actually formed in the Earth's crust hundreds of kilometres down under extreme temperature and pressure, and then squeezes its way up to the surface through fissures due to the faults in it, etc., and may get trapped below layers of sedimentary rock if it can't push its way through. So the Russians don't believe that oil is a fossil fuel at all. And if the Russians are right, this has massive implications. One of them being that there's probably oil in all sorts of other places in the earth beyond the traditional places that we look. So because we think it's the results of these sediments of ferns and foliage getting compressed down, that's where they look. They don't look in a great basalt monolith or a granite outcropping because they go, well, that's not going to be there because it's not these layers. But there is evidence that, yeah, you can find oil in unlikely places like that. And the other thing, of course, is that maybe this whole we're running out of oil thing, peak oil, because we've drilled most of it, there might be a bit of a question mark over that, because if it's actually being extruded up from the interior of the earth all the time, then maybe these oil fields will refill as they're used. Maybe they'll refill if you leave them for a while, and maybe you'll find oil in places that you never thought was worth looking, which would be an extreme problem to the greenies, because they not only want us to transition away from fossil fuels, but one of the armaments they have is, well, you're going to have to do it anyway because it's running out. Imagine if every nation on Earth could suddenly drill in the middle of granite and basalt and all of them got oil. Do you seriously think we're going to stop burning it under those circumstances when Saudi Arabia loses its advantage? What if every country had its own deep oil fields? Fascinating thought.
It is a fascinating thought. Very interesting.
Anyway, let's go to today's myth as a take me out story. So this story is in the Advertiser during the week, and it's a feel-good story. And it says that a farmer in the Adelaide Hills had a crash on his quad bike, broke his neck, knew it was sore but didn't know it was broken. So he got up and his wife put him in the car and was driving him to hospital with a broken neck when a CFS, a volunteer fire truck, went the other way. So the driver turned around, flagged it down and stopped it, where fortunately the CFS members were first aid trained, and they immobilized his neck and therefore saved him. So this was the story. So, you know, great feel-good story. You know, he would have been a paraplegic otherwise, et cetera, but, you know, fortunately the chance that the CFS truck was going the other way and they knew what to do and they immobilized his neck and now he's fine. Okay. So this is a story that has annoyed me throughout my entire career, because due to the nature of the work I did, which was anesthesia and trauma, I had to deal with airways and I had to deal with people with injuries. And in both cases, the best way to manage a patient is sitting up. You know, I used to say to my registrars, humans are meant to be young, thin and vertical. So the airway is easiest to manage in the upright position. And in fact, if you got somebody who had a deep infection in their throat so that their airway was just about to block off, they don't lie down flat on their back. They're bolt upright, mouth forward, tongue out, bending a little bit forward, because that's where the airway is best. You put them flat on your back, the tongue falls back, you lose the airway. So in addition to that, if I want to put a tube down your throat after I've anaesthetized you, I put this laryngoscope in your mouth, tip your head back and lift your jaw up. Now, if you've got one of those cervical collars on, it prevents me moving your head back and it prevents me opening your mouth. So it makes airway management much more difficult. In addition to that, if you've got a chest injury and I've got you strapped flat on your back on a spinal board, which is very uncomfortable, you're not in a good position for breathing. Lying down is not a good position to breathe in. So somehow in trauma medicine, the don't move them school of thought won out over everyone else, even though people like me said, well, I get the don't move them bit, but you're making all the other things I want to do much more difficult. You know, if I lose the airway, the patient dies, and it's more likely if they're flat on their back. So many years ago, I actually looked for the evidence as to, do we need to put these cervical collars on trauma patients and put them on spinal boards, etc.? And bugger me, there's no evidence that they're either necessary or effective. Never has been. Plenty of evidence that they cause problems, airway problems, respiratory problems, pressure sores, uncomfortable patients. No evidence that they work. And in fact, I did a quick search, and this is just one paper. So this is a 2019 paper, which is what's called a clinical review. So it's a study of studies, if you like. So this isn't just one study. This is where they get a whole lot of studies, put them all together and crunch them and see what the answer is. And so the result of that, asking, you know, what should we do with neck injuries in patients with regard to spinal immobilization? This thing said there's no evidence that it works and there's no evidence that we need to do it. And I already knew that. Plus there's a lot of downsides, as I mentioned. Now, that probably creates horror in everybody listening to this, because we all know that, you know, if somebody has a fall or a car crash, the first thing you say, don't move, nobody move them. And because I worked in the field, I used to do crash rescue as well. I used to call that paralysis by rescue. So you crash your car, you're still sitting in the car, maybe you're a bit sore, maybe not, maybe you don't know what you're allowed to do. You know, I'm allowed to get out of the car, I have to stay still. And the first person who gets there is going to say, don't move, which then commits you to this complicated sequence of cutting the car off them. Whereas I would often go up to the car and the first thing I'd say is, can you get out? And often they would. And that's particularly important if the car's in a difficult position. You know, if the car's on its side, to extricate that patient from in there when you don't have a door into it to open is a bloody complicated procedure. You've got to cut the turret, cut the roof off the car, etc., etc., etc. So my habitual first thing I'd say to the patient is, can you climb out? Because if they can climb out, they don't have a broken neck or femur. So it's worth asking if they go, oh, too sore, can't. Okay. But in almost all cases, the first well-meaning first responder has paralysed them in the wreck by saying, don't move. Now, the reason this doesn't matter is simple physics. And I learned this when I worked at the crash research lab in Adelaide Uni for a couple of years, where we were researching the impact loads necessary to cause certain injuries. And if you crash your car, you need to have a 40 to 60 G stop to break your neck, which is why most people who crash their cars don't break their necks. And the ones who do almost always contact something hard in the interior. You don't just get it by and large. And here's an example of how much effort you need to put into a cervical spine to actually break it. So this is a video of a vent rider actually breaking their neck.
So those that are sensitive, look away now. Pause it.
No. It's not too bad.
Yeah, still pretty bad. Oh, yeah. Oh, crap, man. That's bad.
So that rider's pogo sticked off their neck and extended it. Now, the next thing that happened, I'll stop that. What are we following up with? Guitar Hero. That's the next suggestion for them, is it? Yeah. Well, all right, let's not worry about that. So that rider who broke C2, had a C2 cervical fracture, sat up, walked around looking a bit stunned, climbed back on the horse and finished the event. That was at Melbourne. That was in Melbourne 3-day event back in the late 90s by my memory. And it's not my film, it's off the net, but I know the story. So that person had a broken neck, which had broken the bones, but it didn't cut the spinal cord. So that shows me that during the actual accident is when, as the bone breaks, you get the maximum displacement. Things move the most when you're putting that much force into them. So to then say, okay, that neck has gone through that trauma, including breaking the bones, but hasn't moved enough to cut the cord, for you then to say, but if they sit up, it will. Or if they sneeze, it will. Or if they roll over, it will. It just doesn't make sense in physics. Explain to me why you could go through that serious a trauma and not cut the spinal cord when rolling over in bed on the stretcher, suddenly go, oh, I'm paralyzed. It's just bonkers bananas, doesn't meet physics. But that's the truth. And that is why we have no evidence that the spinal immobilization works, because it doesn't work. It does. If the cord was gone, then it happens at the time of the accident. Why wouldn't it happen at the time the bones break, but then happen later when you're applying a 50th of the force to it, 100th of the force to it? You don't. It's just simple facts. Can't happen. And yet somehow the nobody move them people won that argument, and you still get people running up to you with cervical collars and don't move them, and a lot of doctors don't know this either. So fitting one for the Mythbusters, I thought.
Yep. And what was it? Yeah. So Nick was asking about CPR. I know, like for my first aid training, is that it's always airways first, because even if someone's got a broken neck or whatever, it's the most serious things first, isn't it? So if someone's heart's not beating, you're obviously going to try and focus on that, regardless of whether someone's neck's broken or whatever. So you always look at the most serious thing first. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that's a whole other story. But the history of resuscitation, again, is faulty. You know, we have the Dr. ABC thing, danger response.
Yeah, dangerous. Yep.
Okay, the way that started, you know how they invented CPR? going back, I'm thinking 40s or 50s, they actually tasked some med students in an experiment to work out whether the old Sylvester method of ventilating patients worked, and if it didn't work, what did. So back in the day when we could do these things, they had anaesthetized volunteers, so they weren't breathing, and they tried, okay, does that get the air in and out, or do they go blue? And yeah, that doesn't work. You know, the Sylvester method doesn't work. So they tried blowing air in and out, and that does work. Okay. So that was where CPR started. It wasn't a how do we wake up dead people question. It was a how do we ventilate people who aren't breathing question. And they did notice that opening the mouth, moving the chin back, opened the airways so that the breathing method, the blowing into them, worked. So CPR started with the A and the B.
Mm-hmm.
Now, later on, they added the C in for heart attacks. So initially, CPR was for people who had stopped breathing. So this was for drownings, this was for gas asphyxiations, etc. Okay. Now, later on, they wanted to do something about the heart when it wasn't pumping. So they added C, and they added C because A, B, C, like it's alphabetical. Everyone can learn that. Not because it was the right order to do things. And in fact, it's not. Because what matters is whether your blood's going round and round. If your heart stops, you black out within seconds. You're dead within minutes. On the other hand, if you stop breathing, your circulation continues for 10 minutes sometimes. And I've seen this. So I've taken asthmatics to hospital as an ambulance officer who were blue and barely squeaking any air in and out. In other words, they weren't breathing, but their hearts were still going, pumping around that blue blood. And the hospital would give them adrenaline or whatever. This is years back when I was a St. John volunteer. I'd go and see them the next day, they'd be fine because the circulation matters much more than the breathing. And in fact, if you haven't got any circulation, you don't need any breathing.
This is why the focus is a bit more now. So the training that obviously we've been doing, more and more they're going away from less breaths and more focusing on on the compressions. If your heart stopped, and the breathing isn't as critical as what so it's only a couple of breaths in between. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, something like that.
And that also sort of keys into the modern. In the military, they don't teach ABC anymore. They actually do CABC. Because in a military setting, if you're unconscious, you're probably unconscious because of blood loss. So the C is catastrophic hemorrhage. So if they're breathing badly, you stop it, then you do your ABCs. Because let's face it, if somebody's been shot and all their blood's fallen out, CPR is of no use to you. I used to ask my registrars, what are you trying to fix? CPR fixes a heart that's fibrillating, so it's not pumping, but it's not damaged. And it gets air in and out if you've stopped. But if your blood's all fallen out, CPR is useless. So as a broad rule, CPR is useless in trauma. All it does is get in the way of the heart that if it's still beating, doesn't want to be annoyed. And it distracts. You've got to fix the problem. If the problem is your heart's fibrillating, you defibrillate it. If the problem is you're not breathing, you blow air in and out. If the problem is the blood's fallen out, you stop more of it falling out and you put some back in. So that's a little bit of an off-the-cuff detour there. But yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Now, I better answer Maddie's question there. How does an anaesthetic stop your breathing? Okay, there are different components to an anaesthetic. And I used to love asking my registrars, how do anaesthetics work? And they'd wave their arms and talk about receptors. And I say, no, how does it actually put you to sleep? And they'd think that they'd answered it. And I say, it's like alcohol. It soaks into your brain, it stuffs it up. And if you get really, really, really drunk, even your breathing centers don't work anymore. And by the way, you vomit, so there's a lot of similarity. So if you get somebody really, really, really deeply anaesthetized, they will stop breathing. But generally, we don't want them really, really, really deeply anaesthetized because that creates a whole lot of other problems. Blood pressure goes away. So we give them a mixed anesthetic. So we give them something to make them unconscious, propofol, gas, whatever that takes away their consciousness, and we paralyze them with a drug. Because if I want to put a tube down and breathe for you, you won't let me do that. You'll bite, you'll cough, etc. And for most operations, surgeons don't like it if their patients wriggle or roll over during the operation. So we want you lightly asleep and we want you fully paralyzed as a simple rule. So yeah, we'll give you a drug to paralyze you. They used to be curare based, all drugs are poisons. So we block the neuromuscular junction, the thing that lets your muscles work. Yeah.
There you go. The little sedgeway there, and a little sideways.
Well, just to pad it out 2.5 hours.
We're well and truly there this week, brother.
Yeah, and Gail had spinal fractures during a soccer game, kept playing, went to work, only found out because X-ray. Yeah, it became painful. Yep. Okay. Well, the pain's telling you not to move. And remember, to get a cord injury, you've got to break the mechanical structure, the spine, and the broken edges have got to move enough to shear off. That's a simple explanation. You can get a subsequent bleed later. But yeah, just because you break your neck doesn't mean that it moved enough to cut the cord. And if it didn't do it at the point of impact, it's probably not going to do it with sensible handling afterwards. It's not necessary. And looking back to our Brukunga farmer, he got in the car and he's being driven to hospital. So it was at least stable for that. How did it survive that? Why did he suddenly need a mobilizer? Maybe if she crashed the car again, that would have been a problem. But, he's already, and I saw at Modbury in my early days, I saw a guy walk into the emergency department at Modbury who'd fallen off a haystack up in the Adelaide Hills. And he walked in holding his neck and he said, I've broken my neck. And I looked at him and I said, you probably have. So the fact that he was doing that wasn't stopping his head falling off. It meant it was sore. If you break your wrist, people don't come into hospital and say, I fell over at Netball and I reckon I've broken my wrist. They come in with what's called fracture posture. They come in going, I think I broke this. It's sore. I don't want to move it. Same with the head. Same with it. The question is, how much did it move at the point of fracture? And was that enough to shear off the cord?
Yep.
Imagine, what's this one? Imagine waking up, but you're paralyzed. That would be freaky. That is an anesthetic issue, which is rare, and we have ways of guarding against that. But I tell you what, Nick, you know what's even worse? Imagine waking up finding out you're dead. That's even worse.
Yeah, true. Paralyzed. Anyway,
I think we've got on enough, don't you, Mark?
It's like when you wake up and you've been sleeping on your arm and it's all like dead and numb and it's like, dead arm. And that's like,
who's this?
I know. It's the worst, man. It's just like you've got to throw it over. Anyway, we're done, aren't we? Just about done, brother.
We're at that point.
Hey, look at that. Done and dusted, mate. Well and truly over 2.5 hours. Bit of a long one, but then again, I did pad it out a bit at the beginning as well, didn't I? So,
You did distract me at the end quite a bit.
Well, we had a fair few comments. You had a cracker, a lot of comments tonight too, and we did give Dan a bit of time again this evening too. So that was all right. Your
always happy to see Dan.
Fair and equal in our treatment, even those that are detractors and that. So but that's okay.
And I couldn't read his inputs too much, and no, I'm not going to go back. But no doubt he'll spam them into the Rumble comments.
Yeah, no, that's all right. We'll be in there, but that's okay. Always good to have him on board, and good to have everybody else join us as well. Even cracking on for 2.5 hours. So have yourself a blessed evening, and see you next week to do it all again, brother Bruce. Yeah, it's about time you fill your glass up, brother.
I thought
Cheerio.
that would get me through, but it didn't.
Well, at least it didn't end up on your laptop, brother. So you're all good.
Do we?
to fight again. For that already burned, he was driven towards the flames. All the signs are there for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away, like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.